Chapter 471 White Paper Crane. The lumberjacks had to complete their tasks for the day before returning to the stronghold. In the meantime, Ren Xiaosu chatted with this group of workers while waiting for them to finish. After Ren Xiaosu departed from the razor-sharp company without saying goodbye, he did not immediately venture deeper into the central plains from the Zong Consortium's territory. Instead, Ren Xiaosu headed south and found the place where the flood occurred. From there, he marched all the way eastward while looking for tracks of Yan Luyuan and the others along the riverbank. The valley had formed a new river channel. Almost every year, the landscape here would be different from the previous year. The river that flowed downstream from the snowy mountains was like time washing away the familiarity of what used to lie here. As he followed the river, Ren Xiaosu even saw the settlement where his family used to live and the place where Yang Xiaojun taught him how to use a sniper rifle. But times changed, and things were no longer as they used to be. Ren Xiaosu did not manage to find any leads with regards to Wang Fugui and the others even though he was about to reach Stronghold 61. One of the lumberjacks sighed and said, "Kid, you sure are lucky. You actually came out alive after getting lost in the mountains." Ren Xiaosu asked, "What's in the mountains?" "There's a herd of boars in there," the lumberjack exclaimed exaggeratedly, "and they're especially ferocious." Ren Xiaosu thought silently, is this lumberjack referring to the herd I ate for dinner a few days ago? But he did not say anything and just played along. That was a close call then. Fortunately for me, I didn't encounter them. He asked the lumberjacks as he sat next to them, "Bros, do y'all usually work around here?" "Yes," a lumberjack who just sat down to take a break said, "We're chopping down trees for the Wang clan and have been working in this area for the past few months. Years ago, we were logging in the north. However, the Wang clan said that we had to practice sustainable logging and should not chop down trees in the same area. So we got sent here instead. The place where we used to cut wood in the north is being replanted with trees." Someone said with a smile, "Don't you find it strange? After all that effort to chop down the trees, they're replanting them. I wonder what on earth they're thinking." Ren Xiaosu did not answer that question and continued asking, "Did you see anyone drifting down from upstream?" The lumberjacks paused for a moment. "Are you looking for your family?" "Yes. In fact, bodies often drift down from upstream, probably due to the war in the northwest. But we haven't come across anyone who's still alive by the time they drift all the way here." A lumberjack shook his head. "This is the only river that we can still see bodies adrift on. Apparently, this river is formed by the snow melt from the mountains, so there's no carnivorous fishes in it. If it were the other rivers, any bodies would have already been devoured by the fish." Ren Xiaosu's heart stopped for a while and he said nothing more. In reality, he had always been afraid to hear about the bad outcomes. But it did not really matter since he would continue to look for them. Besides, it wasn't like these lumberjacks came here every day. Perhaps they might have just missed them. That was still plausible. The lumberjack looked at Ren Xiaosu. "I'll tell you now that although the Wang clan doesn't reject those who flee here from the northwest, nobody's allowed to enter the stronghold. So former stronghold residents like you should be mentally prepared to become refugees like us. You'll only be allowed to do menial work to support your family." Ren Xiaosu said with a smile, "Bros, I think y'all've gotten the wrong impression. I'm actually a refugee too." When the lumberjacks heard that Ren Xiaosu was also a refugee, they turned friendlier and asked about the differences between refugees in the northwest and those in the central plains. In the end, the lumberjacks came to the conclusion that the refugees in the northwest did not have a better life than them. Although they were also tired from the constant busy lives, being a class lower than the stronghold residents, and distrusting their fellow townspeople, at least they did not have to worry about starving to death or eating moldy cornbread. A lumberjack said with a smile, "After a busy day of work here, we can still head back to town and enjoy a bowl of hot lamb stew. 1. If we pay a little more, we can even get to eat a burger. 2. Ren Xiaosu was stunned. "The refugees here can afford to buy meat. Ha, the lamb stew we have is only the broth, as if there's any meat in it. It's great that we can even enjoy meat broth." Realization dawned on Ren Xiaosu. It truly was great to even have meat broth to drink. In comparison, the Central Plains was indeed wealthier than the Southwest and Northwest. This was true since ancient times. In the evening, the leader of the logging team drove back to town with a truckload of wood. As the workers sat on the wood in the back of the truck, someone asked Ren Xiaosu, "Did you ever meet Fortress 178's troops while you were in the northwest? We heard from the stronghold residents who fled from the northwest that the Fortress 178 troops are extremely strong, especially that company of soldiers who utterly defeated the Zong consortium in the north. They even burned the granary." Ren Xiaosu said with a smile, "I've only heard about them. I haven't met them before." "Come on, tell us about them. Everyone in town's been discussing what's going on in the northwest recently. It sounds even more exciting than the storyteller's tales." Ren Xiaosu thought for a while and said, "I heard that the company of soldiers did not initially plan on crossing the river to the north, but they thought that it was not good to drag the war on for too long. As the saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility, so they felt that they had the obligation to cross the river to finish the war in the north. But even though the company is powerful, the most powerful one of them is still the supernatural being in their ranks. I heard that he's extremely brave, mighty, and handsome. Later on, he headed north by himself to Stronghold 146. That battle was a storm. By the way, he's that supernatural being y'all were mentioning earlier." As he continued relating the story to them, the lumberjacks got so engrossed they did not notice they were almost back in town. We arrived so soon." But at this moment, a strong gust of wind blew past them. It seemed that there was something white flapping its wings in the sky, but it was pushed down by the wind. Ren Xiaosu felt that something was not right, so he jumped up from the truck and grabbed the white object with his hand. When he opened his fist, he was surprised to see a small and exquisite paper crane. The paper crane looked alive and was wriggling its body and glaring at Ren Xiaosu. Although this paper crane did not have any eyes, Ren Xiaosu had this bizarre feeling that the tiny little thing was really staring at him. As the paper crane's wings were extremely sharp, Ren Xiaosu accidentally cut his finger on one. When Ren Xiaosu let go of his hand in pain, the paper crane started flapping its wings again and tried to escape. But before it could fly out of his palm, Ren Xiaosu caught it again. Ren Xiaosu unfolded it curiously. Inside the squarish white piece of paper, a message read, "The war in the north has ended. The King Consortium has signed an alliance treaty with Fortress 178. Is someone trying to relay this information to the Central Plains?" Ren Xiaosu wondered. However, even he did not know about the alliance between the King Consortium and Fortress 178. Before he could figure it out, a lumberjack asked, "Why would that white paper crane suddenly fly here?" The lumberjacks did not clearly see what Ren Xiaosu did with the paper crane. They just felt that it was a little strange to see it flying here. Chapter 472 Robbery. "Maybe it was blown here by the wind," Ren Xiaosu said with a smile. "Do y'all remember?" a lumberjack said in a low voice. "The storyteller in town once told a story about these white paper cranes. He said that a very mysterious organization likes to use paper cranes to relay information. Ren Xiaosu, is there anything written on it?" Ren Xiaosu tightened his fist and said with a smile, "There's nothing on it. That storyteller must have made that story up. Why would anyone use paper cranes to relay information?" That's true. Everyone heard what Ren Xiaosu said and did not question him any further. But Ren Xiaosu was actually startled to hear that. He had a feeling that the mysterious organization might just turn out to be real. But how could an organization like this let him intercept their means of communication so easily? Could it be a coincidence? Or was it intentionally arranged? As Ren Xiaosu was cautious by nature, he would always delve further whenever he encountered something strange. But he did not consider whether it would be a problem for anyone else to try to catch the paper crane. Perhaps they might even be killed by the small paper crane if they tried to catch it. He intended to refold the paper crane as he wanted to see if it would try to fly off again. But after unfolding it, Ren Xiaosu realized he did not know how to refold it. He never learned something like this before. So Ren Xiaosu placed the piece of paper into his storage space. The paper crane was probably the power of some supernatural being. Ren Xiaosu turned to look in the direction of Stronghold 61 as that was where it was flying towards. Perhaps that supernatural being was at Stronghold 61 right now. When they reached the entrance of the town, the leader of the logging team parked the truck and jumped out of the vehicle. He said to Ren Xiaosu, "A lot of people in town fled here from the northwest. If you want to find your family, you can start looking for them here. If they're not here." He did not finish the sentence. What the team leader was implying was that if they were not here, they would probably be dead. The team leader said, "I live on the west side of town. If you have nothing to do and want to earn some money, you can come to look for me in the western part of town. It just so happens that we have a lot of work recently." "Thank you, bro, but I don't think I need a job yet." After thanking him, Ren Xiaosu started his search in town. He went looking for Wang Fugui and the others shack by shack. The town here was huge and was many times larger than those he had seen in the southwest and northwest. A lot of the escapees who fled here had already set up the shacks. Many of them had ashen looks on their faces with hints of despair. A lot of these high and mighty stronghold residents were probably unable to accept that they'd suddenly become refugees. Some of them had brought along their money and thought they could continue to live a comfortable life when they got to the Central Plains. However, all of the strongholds under the Wang Consortium had stopped accepting the Zong Consortium's currency. When people came here to do business in the past, the Zong Consortium's currency could be used. However, that was no longer the case. It was as though the Wang Consortium firmly believed that the Zong Consortium would suffer a crushing defeat. As such, these escapees were forced to pawn the gold jewelry in order to survive. One of the stronghold residents was following a refugee and saying he wanted to work to earn some money for food. However, he was rejected by the refugee because he was too old and did not look like he was strong enough to do labor. Some of the stronghold residents scolded these refugees for daring to look down on them. As a result, the refugees gave them a good thrashing and even spat on them. Of course, some stronghold residents quickly accepted their fate and did whatever they could to trade for some food. Although the refugees in the Central Plains had it better than those in the southwest and northwest, they still had to work in exchange for food. This was the ironclad rule that was constant everywhere. Ren Xiaosu was disappointed that he could not find any trace of Wang Fugui and the others here. At this moment, he was feeling a little lost. How was he going to look for Wang Fugui and the rest in this sea of people? It was at this moment that a rat-faced worker from the logging team quietly approached Ren Xiaosu and said, "I've been following you around for some time. You haven't found your family yet. That's all right, I have some friends in this place. As long as you have money, they can help you locate them." Ren Xiaosu turned around and saw the lumberjack's eyes looked rather shifty. It seemed that the man had guessed that Ren Xiaosu had some money on him after overhearing the conversation between the team leader and him about not needing a job yet. Ren Xiaosu said with a smile, "I'll be depending on you then. If you can find my family, I'll be sure to reward you handsomely. Follow me then. It's not convenient to talk here in town." Then the lumberjack turned around and led Ren Xiaosu out into the wilderness. Before they could get far, Ren Xiaosu suddenly asked, "How much farther do we have to walk?" "Hee, we're almost there." As he spoke, the lumberjack arrived at a mound and whistled loudly. Suddenly, 3 people emerged from behind the mound. The lumberjack looked at Ren Xiaosu and said with a smile, "You must be carrying some money on you, right? Hand it over and we'll let you live." Ren Xiaosu wondered, "How many escapees have you robbed using this method? I thought that the people here did not need to shut the doors at night. Wasn't there something known as artificial intelligence here?" Wang Shengyan and Wang Shengji had said that in the territories controlled by their Wang clan, people did not need to close their doors at night because there was an artificial intelligence that could analyze criminal behavior extremely accurately. Only a few people could avoid getting caught after committing a crime. But it didn't seem like that was the case now. The lumberjack sneered, "That's only applicable in the stronghold. What does it have anything to do with us refugees? Hurry up and hand over all your money." "All right then," Ren Xiaosu muttered. So it turned out the Central Plains were just like the Southwest and Northwest. There was also a clear distinction between refugees and stronghold residents. The lumberjack's vision suddenly went black. Right after, he fell backwards with his chest hurting. The rusty metal knife in his hand dropped to the ground with a clang. His 3 accomplices were no exception either, as all of them suffered a sudden blow. Ren Xiaosu put the 4 of them together and said nicely, "I'll ask you all some questions." "Well, I'd just like to find out more about the local customs and conditions here in the Central Plains. Don't be too nervous. Just answer the best you can. These refugees who tried to rob Ren Xiaosu realized they had stubbed the toes on an iron plate. No, how could this only be an iron plate? It might as well be a fucking mountain that was several kilometers thick. In this recent period, they had tasted the sweetness by robbing escapees who fled here from the northwest. Moreover, the stronghold residents were very timid and would immediately cower in fear at the sight of a knife. However, they did not expect to rob a superhuman today. When Ren Xiaosu started questioning him, the exchange went on for the entire night. The 4 refugees in front of him nearly broke down from his interrogation. When day broke, he returned to town alone and did nothing but stand at the door of the only tavern in town and waited for it to open. Not only was he hungry and looking for something to eat, he had also heard there was a storyteller here who brought up something about white paper cranes. Chapter 473 Listener. The town's tavern was only open for business at noon, so Ren Xiaosu returned here and waited. The refugees were up early and headed to the factories in groups to earn their keep for the day. It was very difficult for refugees to save up money. They already earned very little each day, yet the consortium still operated shops that sold meat stew, alcohol, and tobacco, as well as had gambling dens all over town. The Central Plains did not ban alcohol, probably because of the relatively rich foods that were found here. When it was time for the workers to go home, those entertainment shops would be advertising their businesses at their workplace entrances. After a hard day of work, everyone just wanted to reward themselves, so they would spend the money they had just earned. In this town, there was always a place that pandered to their desires. Zhang Jinglan once said this was a world meticulously designed by the consortiums. It seemed like he was not wrong at all. People watching the refugees, Ren Xiaosu recalled the days when he and Yan Luyuan were still living in the town at Stronghold 113. Although that period was more difficult than now, it was still exceptionally wonderful in his memory, so much so that he would deliberately forget some of the suffering he had been through, forget about the time when he could not fill his stomach, forget how he was ostracized by others, and forget the feeling of falling asleep in fear. Then, there would only be happy memories left. Humans are optimistic creatures. To this town, Ren Xiaosu was an unfamiliar face. But with the increased number of stronghold residents who had fled here from the northwest in recent days, no one really cared about his arrival. The stronghold residents who had fled here would hide in the corner and worry about their future lives. Suddenly, a young woman ran out of the back door of the tavern with a notebook and pen in hand. She was looking for these escapees to ask them some questions. Ren Xiaosu leaned in close to listen and discovered this young woman was actually asking the escapees from the northwest about the war over there. She wanted to know how the war had started and if there were any heroic deeds that took place or any particularly powerful figures in it. The young woman wasn't asking the escapees to tell her stories about the war for nothing, though. There would be a payment of 1 steamed bun for every story told as an exchange of equal value. Although payment of a single steamed bun sounded really cheap, to these escapees who had no idea of how many meals they had skipped, this bun was worth their life, so they would say everything they knew. A middle-aged man said, Zong Ying, the commander of the Zong Consortium's front line this time, is still a very capable leader. He used a scheme to make Fortress 178. Interrupting, the girl, around 18 years old, shook her head and said, didn't the Zong Consortium already lose? I don't want to hear about the Zong Consortium's side of the story, I only want to listen to what Fortress 178 has done. The middle-aged man blanched and his heart bled. He used to be a bureaucrat in the Zong Consortium's ranks, but as a result of losing the war, he had to drag his family away from his hometown. And, as if that wasn't bad enough yet, he now had to speak heroically of the enemy's deeds. Was this young woman here to fucking add insult to injury? The young woman said earnestly to him, if you don't have a story to tell, I'll just ask someone else. Grandpa is still waiting. The middle-aged man quickly stopped her from leaving. I'll tell you, I will. Besides, I used to be a high-ranking official, so I definitely know more details than anyone else. When Stronghold 146 was being destroyed, I was right there myself. The young woman was very happy when she heard that. Really? Then quickly tell me about it. If it's interesting, I'll give you another steamed bun. When this middle-aged man heard he could get another steamed bun, he immediately started relating the story without a care for his previous status. He was afraid the other escapees would steal this opportunity from him. Once he started, he droned on for more than 2 hours. Ren Xiaosu went next to them and listened. But as he kept listening, his expression became stranger. At the beginning, the middle-aged man was able to relate the story rather factually. He talked about why Fortress 178 wanted to start a war against the Zong Consortium and why the Zong Consortium had been provoking Fortress 178 in recent years. Truly, this middle-aged man was quite the eloquent speaker. His rhetoric was so good that it made people relish listening to him. There were some things that even Ren Xiaosu did not know about. And then he touched on the actual war, from the attack on Mount Guan and Mt. Donghua, to Sichuan village being taken, to the Beiwen River being broken through, and finally Stronghold 146 getting destroyed. All of those incidents revolved around Ren Xiaosu. While he was on the subject of Stronghold 146 getting destroyed, the middle-aged man started talking about how that mysterious young supernatural being had utterly crushed the entire Zong Consortium's combat brigade. As the girl listened to the story, she wrote it down in her notebook. She wrote very fast, and the more she listened, the brighter her eyes became. She asked, "Is there really such a bold and powerful person in this world?" "He's not just bold and powerful." The middle-aged man sighed and said, "I was inside the manor of the Zong Consortium's third house at the time. I saw with my own eyes how he wrapped himself in steel armor and managed to dodge 3 RPGs. After that." At this point, the middle-aged man suddenly looked at Ren Xiaosu and said in surprise, "Have we met before?" The Zong Consortium had sketched a wanted portrait of Ren Xiaosu. Nearly all of the Zong Consortium's higher-ups had seen that portrait before. But as it was not the responsibility of this middle-aged man to catch Ren Xiaosu, he only took a quick glance at it. Now he felt a shocking sense of familiarity when he saw Ren Xiaosu. However, he could not recall where he had seen him before. Ren Xiaosu smiled and said, "I also fled here from the northwest. We might have met there before." "That's possible." The middle-aged man nodded. Next to him, the young woman urged, "You haven't finished the story yet. Hurry up and finish the rest of it." The middle-aged man was stunned. When he raised his head again to take another look at Ren Xiaosu, he realized he had already left. Ren Xiaosu did not want anyone to recognize him yet. He felt it would be better for him to keep a low profile now that he had arrived at the Central Plains. Although the Central Plains were prosperous, the undercurrents of this place should be similar to that of the Southwest and Northwest. He understood that although the war in the Central Plains had not yet begun, everyone already knew of the intentions of the consortiums here to fight for the Central Plains. He did not wish to get embroiled in these matters. Furthermore, the Pyro Company was here. The Central Plains was the home field of the Pyro Company. In this place, the Pyro Company would no longer be as easy to deal with as before. Ren Xiaosu suddenly realized the escapees were probably all former stronghold residents, and some of them were even formerly people of status. So then, why were there no refugees who escaped here as well? But Ren Xiaosu realized his thinking was wrong. The escapees could only be former residents of a stronghold. In fact, they would also have to be high-ranking officials linked with the Zong Consortium. The refugees in the northwest were very welcoming of Fortress 178. Once Fortress 178 arrived in the Zong Consortium's territory, they would definitely lower the refugees' taxes and improve their living conditions. So why would any refugee want to escape from there? In fact, they probably could not wait for Fortress 178 to arrive. As for the normal stronghold residents, they did not have to worry about the war affecting them at all. Only the high-ranking officials would worry about getting removed from the system. After all, during the time the Zong Consortium was in power, the high-ranking officials caused quite a lot of trouble for the stronghold's residents and refugees. Ren Xiaosu had been to many strongholds, so he knew the Zong Consortium's officials were definitely not any better than those from the Li Consortium, the Qing Consortium, or the Yang Consortium. At the thought of this, Ren Xiaosu cast aside his sympathy for the escapees. None of those who could come here despite the guilt would be good people. The waiter in the tavern pushed open the creaking wooden door. Ren Xiaosu got up and walked in. Chapter 474: A Cell Phone. In truth, Ren Xiaosu had come to the tavern because he wanted to listen to stories. When he got a rough understanding of the rumors surrounding the Anjing house, he suddenly heard an interesting but terrifying saying about how there was no one in this world the Anjing House could not kill. This was an extremely secretive organization whose members were scattered and acted independently, yet it was also very powerful at the same time. One of the more interesting stories about the Anjing House spoke about how the heir of a small consortium entrusted the Anjing House to assassinate his biological father in order to inherit the family business earlier. In the end, after a week, the Anjing House said they had completed the mission. However, the heir realized his father was not dead yet. Hence, he angrily accused the Anjing House of being untrustworthy. He had already paid the fee, but the Anjing House had broken their promise. The fee was equivalent to 5 or 6 years of his savings as the heir of the consortium, and it was a huge sum that normal people would never get to see in their lives. However, the Anjing House calmly replied to that consortium's heir, "You said you wanted your biological father killed. Your mother's bodyguard from more than 10 years ago, who's also known to you as Uncle Wang, has been killed. He's your actual biological father." Along with that reply, the Anjing House also sent a DNA paternity test report to the heir. The heir of the consortium was stunned. What kind of a fucking twist was this? He did not even know when the paternity test was done, much less how the Anjing House could have learned of such a secret. This heir apparent of the small consortium almost had a mental breakdown. Ren Xiaosu did not know whether this incident had really happened, but he was very interested in the ability of the Anjing House to find people. Furthermore, he had a long chat with the lumberjacks who tried to rob him yesterday and found out from them that there was even a rumor among the people that if you helped the Anjing House carry out a mission, you could choose not to be paid monetarily and get them to do something of equal value for you instead. However, all of this was just hearsay. After all, they were just some rumors the refugees had heard, so Ren Xiaosu understood well that these rumors were most likely fabricated. For example, there were now even rumors about him, the war hero of Fortress 178, being over 2 meters tall and not ever taking his eyes off his gun while sleeping. He was even known to be more inclined towards certain subjects. What the fuck did it mean to be more inclined towards certain subjects? Ren Xiaosu was perplexed. He could understand the basis of the other rumors, but who the fuck would spread rumors about him being more inclined in certain subjects at school? There was no fucking basis to that rumor at all. And what did that have anything to do with combat? After the tavern opened for business, he went inside and ordered 2 dishes. Then he noticed the young woman, who had gone around earlier taking notes as she listened to stories from the northwest, helping a blind old man towards a chair in the middle of the tavern. Ren Xiaosu understood now that this young woman was the granddaughter of this storyteller. The reason why she was just now asking people to tell their stories was so she could collect more material for her grandpa. Ren Xiaosu became even more interested in what tales the storyteller would weave. This was because, when the young woman was listening to the stories earlier, she would occasionally interrupt the middle-aged man to analyze the logic of what he said. Clearly, she was very particular about the veracity of the stories. When the young woman saw Ren Xiaosu, she greeted him with a smile. Meanwhile, the tale that the storyteller narrated today was about the war in the southwest, and the main character was King Zhen. In the story, there was also a supernatural being who acted as the King Consortium's spy and helped to bring down the Li Consortium's Divine Arms Battalion. Ren Xiaosu smacked his lips in satisfaction. Although he was no longer out there fighting wars, the legend of his deeds was still spreading to many places. Suddenly, Ren Xiaosu felt that even though he clearly did not wish to get involved in those disputes, it was as though everything that happened in the northwest and southwest was somehow related to him. Ren Xiaosu had come here because he wanted to listen to stories about the Anjing House, but he was not in a hurry to know. If this topic wasn't touched on today, he was fine with coming back again tomorrow to listen. The storyteller would definitely talk about it someday. That night, after Ren Xiaosu left the tavern, he went to the grocery store closest to the stronghold to trade his gold for money. When he saw the owner of the grocery store, Ren Xiaosu felt as though he had seen Wang Fugui again. It was just that this owner was not as benevolent as Wang Fugui. Ren Xiaosu decisively bought a brick house with the money he exchanged for, and it even came with a backyard too. Suddenly, the entire town was abuzz with news that a rich man had arrived. Every day, Ren Xiaosu did not do anything other than dumping corpses in the morning and going to the tavern to listen to the storyteller from noon until night. The storyteller would only tell 2 stories a day, while there would also be a preview of what would be talked about in the next session. The reason for dumping corpses was that his exchanging of gold for money had alarmed some of the ruthless people in town. When they saw that Ren Xiaosu was able to so generously afford a brick house, they started getting ideas to rob him. There were constantly people climbing over the wall of Ren Xiaosu's house in the middle of the night. However, all of them would always disappear after that, like rocks sinking into the sea. These people were all very secretive in their actions. A lot of people only realized the ruthless people in town seemed to be lessening after they had been missing for a few days. At first, nobody thought much of it. Slowly, the atmosphere in town became much more peaceful when the ruthless people who often liked stealing from others started going extinct. There were also some ruthless people who sensed that something was amiss and decided to run away. They felt like someone was secretly hunting them down in this town. This rumor was spreading around the town: someone is purposely hunting down the ruthless lawbreakers. Initially, Ren Xiaosu still had to trade his gold for more cash. But after killing so many of the ruthless people, the money he had on hand started increasing instead of decreasing. Since Ren Xiaosu was not a good person either, he did not feel bad about spending this ill-gotten gains. And to his surprise, he found an old cell phone on one of the people. Although the cell phone was very basic and worn out, it was not enough to stop Ren Xiaosu's curiosity for new stuff. Ren Xiaosu had also seen an instructional manual for a cell phone from before the cataclysm in the Yang Consortium's library. However, he had never seen an actual cell phone before and only had experience using a satellite phone. The cell phone did not have a charger, and there was nowhere in this town where it could be charged. However, this problem did not stump Ren Xiaosu since he had the nanomachines. As he waited for the cell phone to finish charging to turn it on, a glimmer shone in Ren Xiaosu's eyes. This was the first time he had come across such a high-tech, daily necessity. However, after studying it for a long time, Ren Xiaosu realized this device only had the functions of sending and receiving text messages, as well as taking pictures. But who would that refugee be sending messages to? The mailbox was empty, and so was the photo album. Or could it be that the refugee who had it previously was only holding onto it but had never used it before? He went outside and asked around. Some refugees said some of the Wang Consortium's big shots in the stronghold had been using cell phones for a long time now. Ren Xiaosu did not think too much about it and assumed the refugee had gotten it from robbing the escapees. As the number of people looking for trouble decreased, Ren Xiaosu was finally able to calm down. He started to concentrate on listening to all of the stories that were told, such as the Pyro Company secretly capturing supernatural beings, or the Qinghe group in the Central Plains that had a method to create supernatural beings. As long as one could complete 8 mysterious challenges, they could unlock the genetic code to awaken their power. However, no one in the outside world knew what these 8 challenges were. Chapter 475 Lamb Stew. There was another supernatural organization called the Riders that operated under the Qinghe group, but the Riders did not participate in the competition for resources and had been searching for something for more than 100 years now. Then the storyteller touched on the saboteurs and spoke of how it had quietly changed from purely fighting against the use of nuclear weapons in its earlier years to having different aims now that the group had gone through some reorganization in its ranks. The customers in the tavern were all old-timers, so they had heard many stories from the storyteller before. Therefore, when stories were repeated, they would appear uninterested and only focused on drinking. Only Ren Xiaosu was listening attentively from the beginning till the end. Some of the customers beside him could not help but wonder who he was. This was because the spending level at this tavern meant that not anyone could come here just because they wanted to. Now that a rich man had suddenly appeared in town, everyone would definitely pay a little more attention to him. However, they realized Ren Xiaosu would just sit there alone and listen to the stories being told every day. He did not try to interact with them at all. The esquires in town were all thinking to themselves that he was probably some family member of the Zong Consortium that had escaped the war and that it was only a matter of time before his pockets were emptied. Ren Xiaosu listened to the stories every day, and his life became unusually peaceful. But one day, he received a text message on the old and worn-out cell phone he carried around. Stronghold 67, C rank. Takers, please reply. This text was very perplexing, so Ren Xiaosu did not bother with it. He was just using the cell phone as a camera, and he found it quite novel. Ren Xiaosu used the cell phone to take pictures of the beautiful sunset. When he saw the sumptuous lamb stew in the tavern, he took a picture of it as well. He thought that when he got reunited with Lu Yuan in the future, he could show him the pictures and let him know what the legendary lamb stews were like. The stew in the tavern was different from those sold at the market stalls in town. It was slightly more expensive but also had meat. After ordering the stew, the waiter in the shop would even give each customer 2 flatbreads and let them break it themselves. The easier they tore, the better. Some people said that if you didn't break the bread yourself, or if you didn't do it properly, the chef would secretly spit in your stew. On this day, Ren Xiaosu came to the tavern and realized the storyteller was not there. Curious, he asked the waiter, "Where's the storyteller?" The waiter smiled and said, "You must not know since you're a new customer. The old man doesn't come here every day. He occasionally takes a break too, when depends on his mood." Ren Xiaosu thought to himself that this wouldn't do. He was looking forward to listening to more stories. Hence, he resolutely asked the waiter where the storyteller lived and went to knock on his door to make him go to the tavern to tell his stories. The old man was stunned as well. "Young man, I'm only in the storytelling business because I don't want to work in a factory. You showing up at my door now suddenly makes me feel like I'm back in the days when I was still working at the factory before I went blind." Ren Xiaosu felt a little embarrassed by his words. However, the old man sighed again and said, "When I heard that you were showing up at the tavern every day, I thought that it was because you were interested in my granddaughter. But now it seems like you just really want to hear my stories. Tell me then, what stories would you like to hear? We won't be going to the tavern today. After all, I might not tell the stories that you want to hear in front of so many people." The young woman next to him turned a little shy and hid back in her room. Meanwhile, Ren Xiaosu was stunned. He suddenly realized that although this old man had blindness of the eyes, his heart was not affected. This world was really a strange place. Some people were not blind, yet they could not see the truth of things. When Ren Xiaosu heard this, he did not bother hiding it anymore. He bluntly said, "Grandpa, I want to hear stories about the Anjing house." The storyteller smiled. "That's not something a normal person should hear about. Do you feel that I'm normal?" "You're right, you're not normal at all. I'll tell you then. Although the Anjing house had not been established for that long, it was an exceptionally mysterious organization since its inception. Their extraordinary strength was not self-proclaimed. In all these years, there were indeed no missions the Anjing house could not accomplish. Only the world's best hitmen could get a chance to join the Anjing house. Not only would the Anjing house assign missions to these hitmen, but it would also ensure their safety and provide them with facilities. That yarn about the Anjing house killing the biological father of the heir of a small consortium, the one about that Uncle Wang, did it really happen? Ren Xiaosu asked curiously. It was a real incident. The storyteller nodded with a smile. So does it mean that by completing a mission for the Anjing house, I can get him to help me do something of equal value? For example, to help me find someone? Ren Xiaosu asked. Yes, the storyteller smiled and said, so you're not looking to have someone killed for you but just looking for a person instead. If I want to kill someone, I can do that myself, Ren Xiaosu said calmly. A certain aura of arrogance belied the way he spoke. But the storyteller did not take it to heart. He only sighed. Times have indeed changed. Ren Xiaosu asked again, do you think that the Anjing house is a good organization or an evil one? I'm not trying to judge them or something, but since I need their help to find some people, I have to at least know if they are dependable. Ren Xiaosu was worried he might end up compromising Wang Fugui and the others' safety by getting the Anjing house to look for them. The storyteller thought for a moment and said, all these years, the Anjing house has always had a very clear criteria for the people they kill, and their targets were also deserving of death. Many of them are the radical members of the main factions in various consortiums, while the important figures of the conservative factions are usually protected through missions that seek to kill hitmen who target them. However, due to the extremely high price of that, the Anjing house has rarely handled such missions personally in recent years. They don't personally handle the missions. Then who do they get to do it? Ren Xiaosu was stunned. They hire some of the hitmen who are waiting for the trials. The storyteller smiled and said, the Anjing house dispersed a bunch of cell phones a few years ago, and it said that the phones can only send and receive text messages and take pictures. The purpose of sending and receiving texts is for the Anjing House to issue missions and wait for interested hitmen to accept them. The mission details include the mission rank and hitmen rank that can accept it. As for the camera, that's necessary for taking pictures of the body after the mission's been completed. The pictures are automatically sent to the Anjing House. When Ren Xiaosu heard this, he was absolutely taken aback. Cell phones. Cell phones that could only send and receive text messages and take pictures as well. Using text messages to take on missions, and the missions are even ranked. Didn't he have one just like that in his hands? However, the old man said that after taking a picture, the cell phone would automatically send it over to the Anjing House. Ren Xiaosu recalled the lamb stew in his photo album and suddenly fell deep into thought. The people at the Anjing House probably did not think they would receive a photo like that either. Haha, how magical, Ren Xiaosu laughed awkwardly. The old man continued, after completing a series of missions, you can rise from D rank to A rank. Only then will you be qualified to participate in the formal trials to join the Anjing House. Ren Xiaosu suddenly wondered, Grandpa, how do you know about all this? Normal people don't tell others these stories, right? So how true is all of that? The storyteller paused for a moment, then said with a smile, how do you think I lost my eyesight? Chapter 476 Please don't send pictures of lamb stew again. Ren Xiaosu had gained a lot of knowledge by finding his way to the storyteller's house. At least, he realized what the old cell phone he had picked up was used for. Furthermore, he was also able to learn a bit more about the Anjing House. Ren Xiaosu returned to his own house and turned on the cell phone again. After hesitating for a while, he sent a text message back to the other party. Accept mission. He hesitated because he did not know what kind of future he would face after sending this text. Today's events would bring about a change in his life once again. The other concern he had was that Stronghold 67 was quite far away from Stronghold 61, so it would take him some time to complete the mission. But this was probably the best way for him to find Wang Fugui and the others now, wasn't it? Based on his strength alone, it would truly be very difficult to find them in such a vast sea of people. Perhaps he could have used Wang Shengji's influence to look for them by frankly explaining the situation to him, but Wang Shengji knew exactly who he was and knew very well how Zhang Jinglan viewed Ren Xiaosu. Therefore, it would be hard to guarantee that the Wang clan would not get any other ideas from this relationship. But the Anjing House did not know who he was. He would be anonymous to them, so there would still be some room for a buffer. While Ren Xiaosu was thinking about all that, the old and worn cell phone lit up. It was a text from the other party. The holder of this cell phone has not reached C rank yet. Unable to accept mission. Ren Xiaosu froze. It turned out that all the thinking he did had been for nothing since he was not even allowed to accept the mission. He looked at the cell phone in his hand in disbelief. Was the previous owner of this phone a pig? The phones were dispersed a few years ago, so why was the previous owner still AD rank? Besides, the Anjing House was also really odd. Since you already know that I'm AD rank, why are you mass sending me a C rank mission? But before he could cool off, the other party sent him another message. Please don't send pictures of lamb stew again. Ren Xiaosu was speechless. Well, alright then, he would just have to continue waiting patiently. Ren Xiaosu still went to the tavern every day. If the storyteller was there, he would listen to the stories he told. If the storyteller did not go, he would just sit there and read. This humble tavern actually started exuding the feeling of a library because of Ren Xiaosu's antics. As for where the books came from, well, he had been to Stronghold 88's library, after all, so there was no reason for him to return empty-handed since he had entered a treasure trove like that. And with Stronghold 88 already destroyed, Ren Xiaosu felt he had actually helped save a great wealth of human knowledge. Didn't they say that people in the Central Plains could get rich overnight if they discovered research from a lab? This meant humans still valued knowledge. Most of the research found in labs were either completed or about to be completed technologies. Once a consortium found it, they could immediately open up a new field of technology. So even though the research could be sold for money, the books in Ren Xiaosu's possession might not fetch sky-high prices. After Ren Xiaosu's visit to the storyteller's place, when the storyteller met him again in the tavern, it was as though that meeting never took place. Both parties kept quiet about it in tacit agreement. Instead, it was the storyteller's granddaughter who became closer to Ren Xiaosu. Sometimes, when she went outside to pry for more stories, she would come back and tell them to Ren Xiaosu in detail before telling the storyteller. The storyteller was not angry about this either. He just vaguely hoped that Ren Xiaosu could receive a mission soon and then quickly scram. The days passed, and the number of stronghold residents who fled here from the northwest decreased. All those who should have escaped had already escaped. Those who did not manage to escape in time would have been dispatched by Fortress 178. Some of the escapees gathered together and went to block the gate of Stronghold 61 every day, saying that they wanted to make a political appeal to the Wang Consortium. They also said they used to be people of status and that the Wang Consortium should not treat them like this. It wasn't that these refugees were stupid, but that they really had no other choice. Many of these escapees had brought their families with them. Their entire family was going hungry, but they had already sold off everything that they could. Therefore, being so starved and unable to take manual labor, this was the only option left. At the beginning, the Wang Consortium did not even want to bother with them. After all, 90% of these people were former Zong Consortium officials who did not even know how to use technology. Some of them were originally in the field of technology, but after holding their elevated positions for so long, they had already lost relevance. Therefore, to the Wang Consortium, they were completely useless. Later on, the town administrator felt it would become a problem if these people blocked the gate day in and day out, so he simply ordered for them to be beaten up. Only then did the escapees start behaving. Some of them started performing manual labor, while others continued to think of crooked ways to survive. Answer: the refugees in the town of Stronghold 61 were very happy. Seeing that these former Stronghold residents were worse off than them, they were all gloating on the inside. There were even some refugees who went to make fun of the families of these former officials. Although they did not really dare to be too harsh, it was still quite an unbearable sight to watch. In the evening, Ren Xiaosu returned home after having dinner at the tavern. While he was doing some reading, there came a sudden knock on the door. Ren Xiaosu walked over to answer the door. When he opened the door, he held his black saber in one hand behind his back. The nanomachines in his body were also getting restless and ready to form the armor at any moment. However, when he opened the door, he saw a beautiful, middle-aged woman standing outside of it. The woman seemed to have specially cleaned her face and hurriedly put on some makeup with cosmetics brought over from the northwest. She had even changed into a beautiful qipao. Ren Xiaosu asked calmly, "Anything the matter?" The woman asked softly, "Can I go inside and talk?" "No." Ren Xiaosu rejected her. The woman did not expect Ren Xiaosu to be so difficult. She got a little anxious and said, "We're all escapees from the northwest, and I'm from Stronghold 146 as well. Since we were all fellow Zong Consortium residents, can you let me trade for some food?" In these recent days, Ren Xiaosu was living the most comfortably among all the escapees. Of course, in the eyes of the other refugees, Ren Xiaosu was just a refugee like them, as even he had said so himself. Therefore, when the other escapees found out that Ren Xiaosu was leading such a good life, they started getting ideas about him. Ren Xiaosu raised his eyebrows. "Trade with what?" "With myself," the woman said through clenched teeth. She spoke while deliberately posing her body so that Ren Xiaosu could see her legs under the slit of her qipao. The woman had maintained her figure really well. Ren Xiaosu said calmly, "I suggest that you quickly go home and change out of these clothes. It can get quite dangerous when it turns dark." Then he slammed the door shut. A man's voice rang out from behind the door. He lowered his voice and asked, "What happened? Is he not interested?" The woman, who felt rather humiliated by all this, sobbed, "What kind of husband forces his wife out to sell herself?" The man said angrily, "Then what's the point of having you as my wife? Or do you prefer that all of us wait until we starve to death?" Chapter 477 First Come, First Served. Ren Xiaosu's lifestyle did not change because of the attention he was getting from the escapees. When you got hungry, you would just have to work and find ways to survive. This was the worldview he had been inculcated with since childhood. No one owed you a living, and you had to rely on yourself for everything. Although life in town was very cruel, as long as you were willing to work, there would always be a way to survive. In the end, the beautiful woman did not manage to get anything from Ren Xiaosu. However, she seemed to be filled with humiliation and anger as she presented herself to a provisions store owner in town. The boss had a mouthful of yellow teeth and did not wash his hair and feet. If this were the past, the woman would not even have looked at him. But surprisingly, even though she had presented herself to someone, she still secretly gave the food she had received to her husband who scolded her earlier. This puzzled Ren Xiaosu a little. But there were too many strange things in this world that Ren Xiaosu did not have the time to waste on. This woman was not the only one. There were also many other escapees who tried to seek help from Ren Xiaosu. They all hoped Ren Xiaosu would offer them a bite on account of them being fellow former Zong Consortium residents. The escapees even discussed with each other to see who used to be from the same stronghold as Ren Xiaosu, and whether they had seen this young man around before. This way, they might just be able to get closer to him if there was an acquaintance who could link him up. But slowly, the escapees realized none of them knew Ren Xiaosu at all. Not in their wildest dream would they have expected that Ren Xiaosu was not from the Zong Consortium at all. Rather, it turned out he was actually the supernatural being who destroyed Stronghold 146 all by himself in the deep of night. When the escapees finally stopped pestering Ren Xiaosu, he received a new text on his cell phone. Stronghold 62, D rank. Any takers, please reply. He had finally received a D rank mission. Ren Xiaosu suddenly felt a little touched. He immediately replied, accept mission. The moment he sent it out, the other party replied with a new text. The target is Ma Dewei, a manager at the sand plant outside of Stronghold 62. He once killed 9 refugee workers. Reward, 20,000 yuan. The text was simple, and there were 2 pictures attached as well. One was Ma Dewei's picture, and the other was a blueprint of the plant. As for how to use this information to kill Ma Dewei, that would be up to the hitmen themselves. Ren Xiaosu realized the organization behind this cell phone was probably also trying to protect the hitmen by assigning them specific ranked missions. It was to prevent the weaker hitmen from foolishly sending themselves to their deaths. The missions that D ranks could receive would not even require them to enter the strongholds, and the targets were just factory managers. Legend had it that it would be extremely costly for the Anjing House to undertake a mission. However, this referred to the missions that were undertaken by the actual members of the Anjing House. But according to the storyteller, people like Ren Xiaosu were extras who would not even pass the trials to join the Anjing House. Ren Xiaosu immediately set off for Stronghold 62. His current location was about 190 kilometers away from the target, so it would probably take around 3 to 4 hours to get there if he were to use the steam locomotive to travel in the wilderness. Even now, Ren Xiaosu had to be a little cautious when driving the steam locomotive. As such, it would be better to travel there on foot in case he was seen by others along the way. In the tavern, the guests were all puzzled when that youth who usually sat by the window did not appear today. The storyteller's granddaughter asked the waiter curiously, "Did he come by today?" "I didn't see him." The waiter shook his head and teased, "Why, Xiaolu, you miss him." The girl named Xiaolu rolled her eyes and kicked the man in the ass. "Go and get the steamed buns for me. My grandpa's making me go out to get more stories." "All right." The customers in the shop were starting to get used to the young man sitting in the tavern every day. Now that the young man had suddenly disappeared, they found it a little difficult to adjust to. Some people even wondered if he had spent all his money already. After all, not even an esquire living in town could handle coming to the tavern every day. Speaking of which, that esquire dressed really poorly too. Xiaolu was bored stiff as she stood by the window where Ren Xiaosu often sat. She was leaning her arms on the windowsill and waiting for the waiter to bring the steamed buns to her. In this town, only she and her grandpa knew that Ren Xiaosu was not an ordinary person. In fact, he was even the most extraordinary kind there was. Ren Xiaosu slowly walked into the town at Stronghold 62. He smiled and asked around if there was any place near Stronghold 62 that he could get some work to do. He told the people he approached that he had been starving for several days and wanted to look for a factory where he could do some manual labor. The people in town were used to this. There were many refugees like Ren Xiaosu who wanted to look for a factory to work at. Someone told him that if he wanted to fire bricks at the brick kiln, he could go north, if he wanted to carry ore from the mines, go west, and if he wanted to scoop out sand, go south. Any of the other factories required people with craftsmanship and would only take those who were skilled, so it would not be feasible to head to those places to earn money. Ren Xiaosu nodded and thanked the person. Then he walked south. He looked up at the sky. It was only noon now, so there was no need for him to rush. It would be better if he carried out the assassination at night. He had once killed a factory manager. Wang Congdiang's elder brother, Wang Dongyang, had died to his hand. It was really easy to kill a factory manager. Although they were armed with guns, Ren Xiaosu could even ignore it if it were just a pistol. But this did not mean that Ren Xiaosu would rush over recklessly and kill the target. He still hoped he could do it safely by always staying under cover. In the wee hours of the night, Ren Xiaosu, who had been resting in a patch of bushes in the wilderness, suddenly opened his eyes. He walked toward the factory with cautious footsteps. When he reached the outer wall of the factory, he leaped over it and went inside. In the dead of night, no one noticed an uninvited guest had broken into the factory. Ren Xiaosu hid in the shadows and calmly watched the patrolling refugee workers pass him by. They did not even seem to have realized Ren Xiaosu's presence at all. After they left, Ren Xiaosu quietly climbed up the building. But when he reached the 4th floor, he was stunned. This was because he saw through the window that Ma Dewei was already lying in a pool of blood. What the fuck? Ren Xiaosu was dumbfounded. He had come all the way here and had been hiding in the bushes all night, but the mission target had already died. Wait, Ren Xiaosu suddenly realized he might have missed out on something very important. He recalled the process of accepting the mission. Since the text for the mission was sent out as a group message, it meant a lot of people could receive the message. So a lot of people could accept it. Ren Xiaosu sent a text. Has someone completed the Ma Dewei mission? Wasn't I the one who accepted the mission? In the end, the other party replied, first come, first served. Ren Xiaosu felt a throbbing pain in the back of his head. He would actually have to steal away the mission from others. Then why the fuck did he go through all that effort to stay low? Wasn't that just troubling himself for nothing? Chapter 478 Path of the Hitman. Ren Xiaosu returned to Stronghold 61's town angrily and waited for further missions to be assigned through the text. When Xiaolu saw he had returned, she even asked quietly if the mission had been completed. How was Ren Xiaosu supposed to answer? Was he supposed to say his mission was intercepted by someone while he was hiding in the bushes? For the next half a month, he received a total of 7 missions through the cell phone. However, 5 of them were to be carried out in strongholds too far away from Ren Xiaosu. He would never make it there in time. As for the 2 missions that were nearby, one of them was to kill an esquire in town. This mission was easier, but the reward was relatively low as well. The other one was to kill one of the town's administrators. As the difficulty was similar to that of killing a factory manager, the reward was 20,000 yuan as well. However, without exception, every time Ren Xiaosu arrived at the scene, he would discover the mission had already been completed. This made Ren Xiaosu even angrier. Where were the promised 5 completed missions within 2 months? And what happened to moving up to A rank quickly? Initially, Ren Xiaosu thought the hardest part of the assassination missions would be the killing. But now he finally understood the hardest part was to be the first to finish a mission. The threshold for a D rank mission was so low that even some of the refugees and ruthless townspeople could do it. This meant that any random person could easily snatch a mission from him. Ren Xiaosu wondered if there would be fewer people trying for the missions as the ranks went up. After all, the higher the rank, the fewer hitmen there would be. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu received a new text. The target is Zhao Yanbo, the former warden of Stronghold 146's prison. He bullied female prisoners while he was still in office and has escaped to the town outside of Stronghold 61. Reward, 20,000 yuan. Then a photo of Zhao Yanbo was sent over. Ren Xiaosu was stunned for a moment. Wasn't this person the middle-aged man who had forced his wife to offer herself to him? Ren Xiaosu got a pleasant surprise. He had already made 3 trips in vain in the past half a month. It was only because he was too far away from those targets that others could get to them before him. This time, the assigned mission was right next to him. If someone else went ahead and stole his mission again this time, Ren Xiaosu swore to himself that he would start eating while doing a handstand. It was evening, and the townspeople were already back in their shacks. The number of people on the streets was starting to lessen. Ren Xiaosu changed into his attire and even put on a cap as he walked out of his house. Zhao Yanbo had been living quite well recently. Although it was not as good a life as he had at the Zong Consortium, at least he would not starve to death with his wife secretly bringing food back to him. This person had no other pursuits in life anymore. He hid in the shack every day and would secretly ask his wife for some money from time to buy alcohol. When Ren Xiaosu located Zhao Yanbo, he was merely hiding in his shack and drinking some alcohol. However, Ren Xiaosu was not in a hurry to make a move yet. Instead, he hid in the shadows not far away and waited there quietly. 3 hours later, someone suddenly sneaked in from outside of town. He took out an old phone and checked the text. But just as his phone lit up, he heard someone behind him say cheerfully, "Here on a mission." The hitman was shocked. He tried to turn around and swing his sword at whoever said that, but before he could turn around, he was knocked unconscious by a knife hand strike. Ren Xiaosu squatted down and took the cell phone away from the hitman. He sneered and said, "How dare you try to steal my mission? I'll see how you can steal it away now without your cell phone." He happily looted the money the hitman had on him and threw the cell phone into his storage space. He was finally able to vent his anger after wasting the past half a month. However, Ren Xiaosu did not kill the person because he was unsure if this hitman was evil or not. At least this hitman was here to kill someone who was an actual villain. After he finished up, Ren Xiaosu dragged the hitman over to the side and continued waiting in ambush patiently. As long as no one replied to the mission assignment text message with a picture of Zhao Yanbo's death, then this mission would not be considered complete, and there would constantly be new hitmen coming here. Currently, Zhao Yanbo was still unaware of what was happening outside because of him. Ren Xiaosu was filled with a sense of frustration after having waited for half a month for nothing. He wanted to vent this frustration, but the people who had stolen the missions had already left the crime scene. Even if he wanted to blow off some steam, he did not know who he could vent to. Now that the assigned mission area was right next to him, he could easily carry it out without any trouble. Furthermore, Ren Xiaosu felt he could not always have others stealing his missions away. So how should he solve this problem? Ren Xiaosu's thinking had always been different from others. Everyone else would try to treat the symptoms of their problems, while Ren Xiaosu would look at the root of the problem. Wouldn't it be better to solve it by taking care of those people who created the problems for him? Today, all he needed to do was wait patiently and knock out the hitmen who responded to the mission. Afterwards, he would just have to take their phones. That way, wouldn't he be the only hitman left in this vicinity? After that, he could do whatever missions he wanted, and he could even do them whenever he wanted. In fact, he could even pick and choose which missions to take. If the mission was too troublesome, he could totally ignore it. I want to keep a low profile too, but I can't. Thinking of this, Ren Xiaosu nearly laughed out loud. This was perfect. That night, the mission to kill Zhao Yanbo remained incomplete. More and more hitmen arrived at his door, but all of them were taken out by Ren Xiaosu. Although the other hitmen also had problems related to finishing a mission first, they never once thought of Ren Xiaosu's method. It was simply impossible for them to carry out. These hitmen who answered to the mission were only D-ranked. They had not even seen a superhuman before, so they weren't a match for Ren Xiaosu. These people were basically D-ranked because they could only get to D rank. After all, not everyone could complete 5 missions within 2 months. Meanwhile, Ren Xiaosu was only stuck at D rank because he did not manage to complete any of the missions until now. But not everyone was like Ren Xiaosu. Even though he had already become a legendary supernatural being in the Northwest, he was still meddling in these low-level missions here. If the other hitmen knew about this, they would definitely curse Ren Xiaosu for being shameless. In one night, Ren Xiaosu had already taken away 5 cell phones from other hitmen. He estimated there should still be some more hitmen in the stronghold controlled by the Wang Consortium, so as long as he continued seizing cell phones, he would get to pick any mission he wanted one day. At dawn, Ren Xiaosu decided to stop waiting. He went straight to Zhao Yanbo, who was sound asleep, and twisted his neck. He did not have any reservations killing these Zong Consortium lackeys. After Ren Xiaosu took a photo of the scene, he received a text as expected. Mission accomplished. You have a time limit of 2 months, a total of 60 days, starting today, to advance to C rank. Mission reward of 20,000 yuan to be transferred to the anonymous account 1,583,850 in the Wang Consortium Bank. The password is 666,666. As the sun rose, the sky brightened and the red glow of dawn followed. Ren Xiaosu finally let out a sigh of relief. His path of the hitman had finally begun. Chapter 479 The paper crane appears again. In a certain house, someone curiously muttered, "There seems to be a problem with the D-rank mission near Stronghold 61. What's the problem?" a shrill voice asked from close by. What problems can there be for a D-rank mission? In the past, these D-rank missions would be completed not long after they got assigned. Look, the average completion time is 4 hours, but the last 2 missions were only completed after a day. Is that true? The other person went over. Oh, it's really true. One took 21 hours, the other one took 23 hours. What's going on here? Are there no qualified account holders around Stronghold 61? That can't be. There were a total of 11 qualified account holders who accepted both missions. This meant 11 hitmen must have accepted the missions. But even with so many hitmen taking on the jobs, problems were still encountered. Could it be that these 2 missions' targets were harder to kill? Which missions did you assign? They were both very simple D-rank missions. The goal was to clean up some of the more corrupt Zong Consortium officials. What's more, they aren't protected by any bodyguards. The person who started this discussion asked doubtfully, could something have happened? Then who completed those 2 missions? It's that dumbass who sent us pictures of lamb stew. PFFT. The person next to him burst into laughter. It must be a newly qualified account holder, and he actually managed to complete the mission smoothly too. That's not the case either. He did take a few missions before, but perhaps because he was too far away from them, he did not manage to complete those missions. I think this qualified account holder should be in the town of Stronghold 61. Report this to the boss. The person next to him said as he chewed on a cracker, put this information into the latest mission summary report. Although D-rank qualified account holders are not that big a deal, we should still let the boss know. Sure. The person beside him suddenly thought of something. By the way, did those people who accepted the missions at Stronghold 61 take on any other missions after that? Let me see. The first person who spoke was surprised to find that all the qualified account holders that had gone to Stronghold 61 to carry out the missions had disappeared without sending another text. He was puzzled. Could they have taken a break? So they did not take any further missions for the time being. However, among the 11 people, there was someone who was still taking missions without fail. Even if the targets were far away, he would still attempt it. This won't do. We have to inform the boss as soon as possible. During this period, Ren Xiaosu did not do anything else. He just peacefully remained at the small tavern and waited for new missions to be assigned before going fishing. The thought of going to the other strongholds to complete missions had also crossed his mind, but they were way too far away and he was not at all familiar with the places. He might as well stay here for now and familiarize himself with the organization behind the cell phones. In just half a month, he had already collected more than 10 cell phones in his storage space. But to his disappointment, in this same time frame, the other party had only issued 2 missions related to Stronghold 61. In this duration, more than a dozen missions related to the other strongholds were issued. But due to the distance and his unfamiliarity, Ren Xiaosu did not venture there. Ren Xiaosu made a rough calculation. If he could only advance to C rank after completing 5 missions in 60 days, then the missions related to a single stronghold would definitely not be enough for him to achieve that. After all, assassinations could not keep occurring in the same stronghold over and over. I would have to take this step by step, Ren Xiaosu thought. At this moment, he received a new text on his cell phone. The target is Zhang Sengren, the former director of the taxation department of Stronghold 144. He escaped to the town outside Stronghold 61. Reward, 20,000 yuan. Ren Xiaosu was delighted. This was someone else he was familiar with. He did not expect that the Anjing House would keep sending out missions to kill these officials like they had something against them. But based on the previous mission assignments, the organization behind the cell phone would always write a summary of the evil deeds committed by the person they wanted killed, as though to lessen the guilt of the hitmen. Meanwhile, the D-rank missions were mainly focused on the factory managers who bullied the people or some extremely terrible town administrators. But Ren Xiaosu did not quite understand. Would anyone really pay to have these people killed? He did not understand the reason and went to ask the storyteller. In the end, the storyteller said, "My guess is that the missions assigned to the account holders of these cell phones were all issued by the Anjing House themselves. After they accept the incredibly well-paying missions that required superhumans to complete, they pay a portion of it to the superhuman who completes it and uses their own part of the commission to maintain the mercenary hitman system. This acts as their assassin trial selection and, at the same time, eliminates the targets they want to kill. As for what their exact purpose was, only they themselves knew." Ren Xiaosu did not want to think too much about it anymore. He headed straight to the shack where Zhang Sengren was living. This was the third time he had to carry out a mission at Stronghold 61. By the time he was done with it, there would probably be no more cell phones left in the area, right? When he was about to reach the shack where Zhang Sengren was living, Ren Xiaosu took a careful detour to deliberately observe the surroundings. Although it was easy to deal with a former fat cat like him, what if something unexpected happened? As a result, Ren Xiaosu saw a tiny white paper crane sitting atop a pole next to Zhang Sengren's shack. It was already dark. If Ren Xiaosu had not seen a thing like this before, he might not have noticed it at all. The paper crane was facing Zhang Sengren's shack, and Zhang Sengren was currently sleeping on the inside. The situation gradually turned weird. The paper crane was staring at Zhang Sengren while Ren Xiaosu kept his eye on the paper crane. Ren Xiaosu was quite sure he had not spotted any paper cranes during his previous missions. It must have been his recent actions that had attracted the attention of the other party, so they wanted to see who the one causing trouble was. However, he was also quite sure this paper crane's feedback was not immediate. Why else would there be a need to send messages via notes? It would have been more direct to just talk to it instead. Furthermore, he had also caught a paper crane before. Since that paper crane had seen his appearance before, if it could transmit a message immediately, the other party would probably have tried to capture him long ago. Thinking of this, Ren Xiaosu decisively activated Shadow Door and grabbed a hold of the paper crane. The paper crane was caught off guard. When it was grabbed, it tried to spread its wings to cut Ren Xiaosu's finger. With the sharpness of those wings, a normal person would most likely get their fingers cut off. But this time, Ren Xiaosu had learned his lesson and moved even faster than it could react. He immediately threw the paper crane into his storage space once he grabbed a hold of it. Now, there were two paper cranes in the storage space. The first one had even been unfolded back into a piece of white paper. Wouldn't gathering a 1,000 paper cranes bring good luck to the person he liked? Ren Xiaosu's thoughts started running wild. On this mission, Ren Xiaosu couldn't get any new cell phones, probably because he had already wiped out all of the qualified account holders of the cell phones nearby. Chapter 480 The Boss. Ever since Ren Xiaosu completed the mission to assassinate Zhang Sengren, he did not leave his yard for 2 days straight. He even planted 5 potato shooters in the yard to prevent anyone from sneaking up on him. But to Ren Xiaosu's surprise, everything seemed normal even after he caught the paper crane. The other party still deposited the reward money into his anonymous account, while further missions were still systematically sent to him as usual. Nothing had changed at all. Ren Xiaosu suddenly felt a little pained about the 5 gratitude tokens he had spent. He even thought of setting up a stall in town to start selling potatoes. Honestly speaking, Ren Xiaosu would definitely lead a very good life wherever he went, and neither would he need to do any farming. He could just plant a few potato shooters in his own yard, and it would not only prevent thieves, but he would also have potatoes to sell every day. He would have no worries about having no money to spend. The reason why he could sleep with peace of mind every day was due to the existence of the potato shooters. Even though they might be weak, supernatural beings would still grimace in pain if they were not careful. As for the average person, needless to say, their bones would at the minimum break if they got hit. Ren Xiaosu unfolded the second paper crane in the yard, but there was nothing written on it. This disappointed him a little. The supernatural being who controlled the paper cranes probably did not care about losing one or two of them, right? As he unfolded it, he was also paying attention to how the paper crane was folded. After all, he wanted to see if the paper crane would come back to life if he refolded it again. When he finally felt that he understood how it was folded, he encountered a common issue faced by all craftsmen. The eyes, all right, I got it. The brain, no, you don't. When Ren Xiaosu reached the tavern, the storyteller was sitting calmly in his chair and relating the story of King Zhen's encirclement operation of the experimentals to the customers. No one knew where this news had come from, but it was said the King Consortium had already driven the experimentals out of the strongholds in the south. The former residents of the Li Consortium's strongholds were even praising how good of a person King Zhen was, as though they had already forgotten that he was actually the biggest winner of the war in the southwest. However, the experimentals still remained a potential threat. That was because no one knew where they would move to after taking refuge in the mountains. At this moment, Miss Xiaolu was sitting in Ren Xiaosu's usual spot. When she saw Ren Xiaosu, she waved happily at him and asked, "Where have you been to the past 2 days?" "I was just sleeping and lazing around at home," Ren Xiaosu explained with a smile. Oh, Xiaolu did not probe further. She had a new red hairband securing her braided hair at the back of her head. Grandpa is telling a new story today that he just heard about. He said that there's also many people escaping the southwest. However, those escapees are much worse off than the Zong Consortium's escapees. The journey of escape hasn't been smooth at all, and many of them were killed by wild animals that roam the mountains. Apparently, some people ran into the experimentals, and only a few of them survived the encounter. When he heard about the experimentals again after such a long time, Ren Xiaosu recalled how threatening they were in his encounter with them back in the Jing Mountains. He felt that King Zhen had at least handled this matter correctly. Regardless of the war, they would have to deal with these unreasonable creatures first. Then Ren Xiaosu asked, "Xiaolu, do you know how to fold a paper crane?" Xiaolu's dainty face turned red in embarrassment. Who would take the initiative to ask for paper cranes from a girl? Shameless. After saying that, Xiaolu ran out to the backyard of the tavern with her pigtail swinging behind her. Ren Xiaosu was speechless. When the storyteller heard their conversation at the side, he was furious. How dare this young man try to flirt with his granddaughter in front of him? Ren Xiaosu felt helpless. He truly wanted to learn how to fold paper cranes. Didn't they say that all girls knew how to fold them? With that thought in mind, he felt that the supernatural being who could control the paper cranes was quite like a young woman. However, Ren Xiaosu felt he had to go out to find a place to lie low for a bit during this period. After stealing so many cell phones, even a fool could probably guess that something must have happened to those D-rank hitmen at Stronghold 61. Moreover, he could not help but to go into hiding after intercepting 2 of the paper cranes in succession. Otherwise, who was he going to seek justice from if they came down to attack him? Ren Xiaosu bade the storyteller farewell. When the old man heard he was leaving, he looked quite happy. But when Ren Xiaosu said he would still be back after some time, the old man's smile immediately disappeared. After all, Stronghold 61 was the nearest stronghold in the Central Plains from the northwest. Ren Xiaosu went home and changed into a set of clothes he did not usually put on. Then he headed straight out of town with his head kept low. Just as he was about to walk out of town, he suddenly saw a girl wearing a cap and dressed in a neat combat uniform walking towards him. Ren Xiaosu subconsciously wanted to call out Yang Xiaojun's name as he got extremely excited at that moment. But he immediately realized that something was off. The other party was not a girl, but a woman. Judging from her figure and appearance, she was a mature woman who was about 8 years older than Yang Xiaojun. She was probably around 28 years old. Furthermore, Yang Xiaojun usually only donned sports outfits and rarely wore the combat uniform of the military. Although the cap that Yang Xiaojun usually wore was not brightly colored, it was not dark colored either. But the cap this woman had on was simply black in color. What left Ren Xiaosu a little puzzled was that he felt a strange sense of familiarity from the woman. Perhaps she had a certain demeanor that was similar to Yang Xiaojun. But upon careful observation, Ren Xiaosu realized there was a difference. This woman's demeanor was far more rational and cold than Yang Xiaojun. It was like she had seen the ugly side of the world. Ren Xiaosu walked past her with his head lowered and quickly left the Stronghold 61 town. He felt that if he didn't leave now, he might be targeted. After Ren Xiaosu left, the woman turned around and looked suspiciously at his back. But she quickly turned around again and continued on her way. She came to the outside of the shack where Zhang Sengren had been killed. By now, the corpse in the shack had already been removed and buried by the townspeople under the orders of the town administrator. The woman frowned as she looked up at the electric pole the paper crane had previously been sitting on. No one knew what she was thinking. Then she lowered her head and took out a cell phone similar to the one Ren Xiaosu had and sent out a text. From now on, forward all information regarding 1,583,850's missions to me directly. Yes, boss. 1,583,850 was referring to Ren Xiaosu's anonymous account number. The woman walked towards the tavern where Ren Xiaosu often hung out at. It might have been a coincidence or maybe she went there on purpose, but she happened to sit at the window where Ren Xiaosu usually sat. As soon as she entered the place, the storyteller, who was sitting in a chair in the middle of the tavern, suddenly said with a smile, "If you all want to hear about the aftermath, please join me at the next session." After he said that, the storyteller called Xiaolu over and said, "Let's go back home. I'm tired today." The woman wearing the black cap also got up and left. She walked to the door of the storyteller's house with a sense of familiarity. The storyteller smiled at Xiaolu and said, "My dear, please go and buy a bottle of soy sauce. We don't have any left at home." Xiaolu did not say anything. She just turned around and went out the door. The woman looked at the storyteller and asked, "Did anyone strange recently appear in town?" The storyteller smiled as he shook his head. "No." Chapter 481 A Rank Mission. A middle-aged man and a young man were riding their motorcycles and heading towards Stronghold 63, which was more than 300 kilometers away from Stronghold 61. The two men were covered in a layer of dust as though they had been sleeping out in the wilderness for several days. But even so, the middle-aged man's eyes were brimming with a radiating vigor. He looked extraordinarily energetic. Traveling eastwards from Stronghold 61, that yellowish tinge of brown between the prodigious mountains could hardly be seen anymore. The landscape was starting to be covered in greenery, and rivers could be seen running from time to time. The scenery of the wilderness refreshed those who saw it. It was said that this place was a large sanctuary for birds before the cataclysm, with an excellent ecological environment as a conservation park. It was the birds that needed human protection at that time. But when humans encountered birds now, they needed to protect themselves. Although birds rarely initiated attacks on humans, they bore grudges. There was someone in the past who had stolen some eggs in the wilderness and ate them. As a result, he got chased by a flock of birds for more than 100 kilometers. In the end, that person was covered with peck wounds and a thick layer of bird droppings all over him. The bird droppings were plastered all over his body and it made him look like a statue. After parking their motorcycles in the wilderness, they camouflaged themselves with a green tarp. It would be too eye-catching if they rode their bikes for the rest of the journey from here, so they could only proceed there on foot. Enjoying the scenery of the mountains, the middle-aged man suddenly said emotionally, "I see in lush mountains such charm allure, I expect they see the same in me." 1. The young man next to him opened his mouth and thought of asking his master if he had quoted the poem in the wrong situation, but he did not dare to speak up in the end. The middle-aged man continued, "Disciple, do you know why I bought a new cell phone this time and gave it to you instead of your junior brother? You should know that this phone is truly a treasure. Without it, it would be really quite pointless to be a hitman. If you can get into the Anjing house with it someday, that would mean you've really succeeded." "I don't know," the young man answered honestly and shook his head. "It's because you don't talk nonsense," the middle-aged man praised. "Your junior brother always likes to talk back to me. I'll be sending him to the construction site to hone himself." "Master, are we here to carry out a mission this time?" the young man asked. "Of course," the middle-aged man said proudly, "it's mainly to let you see the world and gain some experience. You've been my disciple for many years, and now that you've learned how to kill people, you naturally have to carry out a mission on your own. For now, Master will bring you along to do a few D-rank missions. You should learn as much as you can as we go along. Master, the young man said meekly, will the missions be too difficult? Difficult. The middle-aged man laughed and stroked his handlebar mustache. How can it be difficult when I'm a C-rank hitman doing a D-rank mission? Do you know that some hitmen remain at D rank their entire lives and are unable to advance to C rank? The young man's eyes lit up when he heard this. Then when will Master be promoted to B rank? The middle-aged man looked at his disciple and hesitated. Soon, I'll get there very soon. Master, if you're already this strong, how powerful are the A rank experts? The young man asked as he was always curious to find out about such things. The middle-aged man suddenly sighed and replied, A-rank hitmen are all superhumans are extremely terrifying characters, so I definitely don't stand a chance. I once witnessed an A-rank expert killing someone, but I didn't even understand how they did it. Of course, even among the A-ranked hitmen, there's only a small number of superhumans. As the two of them talked, they arrived at the town outside Stronghold 63. The middle-aged man sneaked a glance at his cell phone. We've just received a mission. It's at a factory nearby. Let's go, we have to set off immediately. There will be people competing for these D-rank missions. They dashed to the nearby factory. The young man was still a little worried. Master, the target is already in the factory. Shouldn't we infiltrate after it turns dark? We'll be seen easily if we go in like this. What's there to be afraid of? How have I always taught you? Don't worry, it would be a joke if a C-rank expert like me can't even complete a D-rank mission. The middle-aged man sneered with a haughty expression on his face. But as they were about to arrive at the factory, someone suddenly called out to them, Hey! Are you two here for a mission? The middle-aged man immediately turned around and fired a pistol fitted with a silencer without hesitation. But in the blink of an eye, he saw the masked youth who had spoken a moment earlier disappear. He did not even manage to land a shot at him. It looks like you're really here for the mission. The young man said with a laugh from behind them, You two should rest for a bit. I'll be confiscating your cell phone so you won't fight with me for missions in the future. After that, a gust of wind blew from behind the middle-aged man. He immediately realized the young man had gone to their rear to try to knock him out. Although he realized it, his body couldn't keep up with the events. The opponent was a superhuman. This speed was beyond the limits an average human could reach. The middle-aged man found that his body couldn't keep up with his opponent's movements even after he had trained for so many years. The young man was simply too fast. However, this middle-aged man was also considered a veteran. He had placed a thin layer of steel plate around the inner collar of his shirt. First, that could prevent someone from slitting his throat with a dagger, and second, it could stop them from targeting his carotid artery. In order not to kill them, Ren Xiaosu held back from using his full strength. However, he realized the middle-aged man did not pass out and was only grimacing in pain after landing a blow. Meanwhile, his disciple had already fainted. The middle-aged man turned around and made a run for it. While Ren Xiaosu was surprised, the middle-aged man nearly wanted to curse out loud. How was this a fucking D-rank mission? Huh? Didn't the Anjing house verify the hitmen's identities before distributing the cell phones? Had they fucking gone crazy to hand a D-ranked cell phone to a superhuman? What the hell was wrong with the Anjing house? Besides, why would a superhuman come and attempt a D-rank mission? Just how much more shameless could you get? Did you lack this bit of money? However, his opponent did not seem to be going all out for the kill. Otherwise, he could have just killed him instead of knocking him out. The middle-aged man knew his opponent had held back. Thinking of this, the middle-aged man did not even try to resist anymore. He immediately shouted, I have money, I can give you money. But as soon as he said that, his vision went dark and he lost consciousness. Ren Xiaosu squatted down next to them and started searching their bodies. To his surprise, he actually found 2 cell phones on them. This was a great harvest. Ren Xiaosu decisively placed the cell phones into his storage space and continued to wait for more victims. When the middle-aged man came to, he found another 4 or 5 people lying next to them. He quickly slapped his disciple to wake him up and then patted himself down to see if his opponent had left him anything. The middle-aged man was overjoyed when he realized his money was still there. Could it be that this superhuman was not after money? But a moment later, he was dumbfounded. His 2 cell phones were gone. At this moment, the middle-aged man finally understood this superhuman was actually guarding the mission so he could seize everyone's cell phones. It was over. They were all done for. To think that he even bragged to his disciple that it would be a simple mission. In the end, they did not even get the chance to lay eyes on the target for the mission. Just which goddamn superhuman had come to pull this prank on them? All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu noticed a text message on his cell phone. The targets in Stronghold 63 are from the Pyro Company's Midnight Squad. They are currently located in the residential building at 476 Xianyang Street. A rank. Reward, 500,000 yuan. Up to 3 people can work in a group for the mission, and all will receive rights to use the safe house and be protected by us upon being pursued by the enemy. Chapter 482. The more chaotic, the merrier. Ren Xiaosu was stunned when he saw the mission to kill the Pyro Company's Midnight Squad. The organization behind the cell phone must really have a grudge against the Pyro Company. Why else would they offer such a high bounty for them? He had fought Midnight before, so Ren Xiaosu roughly knew how strong they were. These people might seem like supernatural beings, but they were only genetically modified and possessed a stronger physique than normal people. Although they were far more powerful than normal people, they still couldn't hold a candle to supernatural beings. After all, the current level of power that supernatural beings had was far more explosive and stranger. Yang Xiaojun once said the Pyro Company had even more powerful fighting forces within their ranks, but Ren Xiaosu could not really judge as he had not encountered them before. The reward this time was secondary. More importantly, the hitmen could earn a one-time right to seek refuge with the Anjing house. Who had not faced a dangerous situation in their lives? Even Ren Xiaosu had encountered such situations many times. For example, after getting injured, anyone would require an extremely safe place to recuperate. At such times, deaths were the most likely to occur because even supernatural beings could get killed by normal people. Therefore, having a secret safe house and trusted protection would definitely be everyone's first choice. Was the Anjing house trustworthy? At the very least, they had an extremely reliable reputation among all hitmen. Why else would everyone want to join them? Therefore, the Anjing house's offer of protection for those who completed this mission would definitely tempt many people. It was rare for a hitman to meet a good end, and this was something every hitman knew. Ren Xiaosu frowned when he saw the text. The mission happened to be posted at Stronghold 63, which was right next to him. However, it was an A-rank mission, so he couldn't accept it even if he wanted to. He would have liked to take on the Pyro Company too. After all, Yang Xiaojun seemed to have a grudge against them. However, he was only D-rank right now. Including the mission just now, he would be considered as having completed 2 missions at Stronghold 63. Even though he should be able to get promoted to C rank, he was still far from getting to A rank. Therefore, this mission did not seem like it had anything to do with him. Wait, Ren Xiaosu suddenly realized that even though he could not accept the mission, he could still go and watch how the A-rank experts conducted their missions since the address was made known to him. When he got there, he could just hide in the shadows and watch those hitmen take on the Pyro Company. The fiercer the fight, the better. At this moment, one of the greatest characteristics of human beings was vividly reflected in Ren Xiaosu. He just wanted to watch chaos ensue. The more chaotic it was, the merrier. Just as Ren Xiaosu made up his mind to sneak into Stronghold 63, a person in a house somewhere muttered, that 1,583,850 has completed yet another mission. According to the time frame, he's already completed 5 missions within 60 days. Should we promote him to C rank? The man next to him said, didn't you notice that ever since he went to Stronghold 63, those D-rank missions in the vicinity have also been delayed for more than 20 hours before they were completed. Moreover, it seems the 6 account holders who accepted the mission initially have all disappeared as well. The person next to him said, I definitely won't believe it if you say it had nothing to do with him. He must be the one who stole the other hitmen's cell phones at Stronghold 61. The Anjing house was not stupid. These suspicious missions were all completed by the account holder 1,583,850, so even a fool would know there was something wrong with this guy. After what happened at Stronghold 61 a while ago, they had begun investigating the case. Even though their boss had personally made a trip there, she was still unable to catch the culprit. We better consult with the boss to see how we should handle this. When they sent a text to their boss, she replied, "Don't alert him. Promote him to C rank and then observe what he gets up to. Don't group send him any more details of D rank missions either in case he tries to harm the other D rank hitmen." The two people in the house asked again, "What if he kills the other hitmen?" Their boss replied, "He won't." Anjing House had encountered many hitmen with different personalities. For example, some of them had unique fetishes or could get extremely unruly. But as long as they could complete their missions, the Anjing House would not be too bothered. It was just that the candidate they encountered this time was a bit too much. The two members of the Anjing House in the building were responsible for assigning missions and allocating resources, and this residence was their safe house. Since their boss did not give any clear indication, they would just have to go with their boss's instructions. When Ren Xiaosu received the text saying he had been promoted to C rank, he had already quietly sneaked into Stronghold 63. He wanted to observe what would be taking place here. When Ren Xiaosu sneaked into a stronghold this time, he did not have to hide under a vehicle. He could just leap over the walls and into the stronghold now. The Wang Consortium's stronghold looked even more prosperous than the other strongholds. At 10 p.m., colorful neon lights were still flashing in the streets and illuminating the night in the stronghold, making it seem like day. However, the difference between this Wang Consortium stronghold and the other places was that there was a surveillance camera installed on the streets every 100 meters. Furthermore, Ren Xiaosu heard that if people stayed in a hotel or ate in a restaurant in the Wang Consortium's strongholds, they would need to swipe their ID cards. All the people in the stronghold city were like a dataset being supervised by an artificial intelligence. Regarding the Wang Consortium, Ren Xiaosu had heard much about them. For example, every young man here who was of suitable age would be required to serve in the military. If they chose to default on their service, their entire family would be implicated and get expelled from the stronghold. In addition, if anyone encountered a thief on the streets, whoever was nearby would be obligated to catch them once the artificial intelligence issued a warning. If an adult man saw a thief but pretended not to see them, he would get punished as well. If an elderly person fell down on the road, the person next to them had to offer their help. If the elderly person turned around and accused that person instead, then it would be the elderly person who would be sentenced. All of this was judged by the pervasive artificial intelligence. There were thousands of laws like these all across the Wang Consortium's territories, and everyone had to memorize them and take a test on them during their school years. The storyteller said this was based on the legalism school of thought that originated from the state of Qin from before the cataclysm. The governance of the organization was based on the rule of law. They did not believe in human nature and only trusted rationality and law. Ren Xiaosu was at a loss of words regarding this system. Of course, it was a good thing that everyone should stand up for others. However, he would be unwilling to live in a stronghold like this. It was not that a system like this was bad. In fact, it was actually quite good since the stronghold residents could lead a very safe life at the minimum. However, Ren Xiaosu would not be able to get used to it. He had no intention of judging the good and bad sides of a governing system for the various consortiums. He only felt that there would not be enough freedom if his every action fell under the supervision of others. Ren Xiaosu could not walk around freely in a stronghold like this. That was because the legendary artificial intelligence's database did not have his profile. Once the surveillance cameras detected his presence, it would sound the alarm. Moreover, if a hitman could not carry out a mission perfectly and avoid all the surveillance cameras in a stronghold like this, they would definitely end up being wanted by the entire Wang Consortium. The artificial intelligence would also be able to help analyze where the hitman was hiding. Ren Xiaosu was curious to know how the A-rank hitman would assassinate someone in a stronghold like this. Chapter 483 What's with the posturing? The bounties paid out for missions conducted in the Wang Consortium's strongholds had always been higher than those conducted at other strongholds. This was because most of the hitmen were put in a very dangerous position for conducting a mission here. Furthermore, they would have to escape from all strongholds under the jurisdiction of the Wang Consortium after completing such missions. If they got spotted by the surveillance cameras again when entering the Wang Consortium's strongholds, an arrest order would be immediately triggered. Ren Xiaosu realized there would be surveillance cameras appearing on the tall buildings of this stronghold from time to time. It seemed that the Wang Consortium had also taken into consideration that there could be supernatural beings like him flying over roofs and scaling walls. So he had to remain extremely cautious to avoid getting spotted by them. However, Ren Xiaosu felt that as long as the cameras were not placed everywhere and covered all the blind spots, he would have a chance to take advantage of it. At the bottom of the text he received earlier, a map with the approximate location of 476 Xianyang Street was attached. It was simple and easy to understand. Ren Xiaosu lithely advanced in the direction of the neon lights. During this period, his presence was almost captured by the cameras several times. Fortunately, the speed of the camera's rotation was relatively slow and he managed to get to the vicinity of the mission's target. Ren Xiaosu found a 12-story building and climbed to the roof with his bare hands. After ensuring there were no surveillance cameras on the roof, he carefully laid in wait there. This location was not exactly the best spot to observe 476 Xianyang Street from. That was because there were some buildings blocking his view, and the distance was 900 meters away. Usually, snipers would not choose to shoot from this distance. Moreover, the target was Midnight, whose strength surpassed that of normal people. However, Ren Xiaosu did not choose to go to the best observation spot since if he could judge where the best positions were, the A-rank hitmen would surely know as well. Who knew if there might already be someone waiting there at this moment? 476 Xianyang Street was an apartment complex 5 stories high. Ren Xiaosu could not tell which floor the Pyro Company's Midnight Squad was hiding in, so he could only wait patiently in the shadows. To be honest, Ren Xiaosu was a little impressed by the Anjing house at this moment. He wondered how they managed to discover the whereabouts of the well-hidden Midnight in a sea of people. Ren Xiaosu conjured up his black sniper rifle out of thin air and quietly scanned the surroundings of 476 Xianyang Street through the scope. However, he was puzzled by why there were no suspicious people around. The faces of the pedestrians walking past were never repeated and no one loitered around in the vicinity either. Something was strange. Could it be that he was the first qualified account holder of the cell phones to arrive at the scene because he was the nearest to the target? Ren Xiaosu sat on the top of the building with his large sniper rifle and continued to wait quietly. No one would expect a strange person could have sneaked his way into the middle of an A-rank mission. He wasn't here to do the mission and just wanted to watch the commotion. Suddenly, Ren Xiaosu turned serious when he saw 5 people walking out of the apartment complex. The demeanor of the Pyro Company's Midnight Squad was totally different from that of the normal stronghold residents. Normal people might not notice it, but how could Ren Xiaosu, who often dealt with supernatural beings and elite soldiers, not be able to tell? Moreover, Midnight had always been a group of 5, and it just so happened that there were 5 of them here. Ren Xiaosu placed his sniper rifle in position and began to slow his breathing. Yang Xiaojun had said that controlling one's breathing was one of the keys to unlocking the shackles of the body. If no one from the Anjing house came here to carry out the mission, then he would not mind helping Yang Xiaojun kill off some members of the Pyro Company. He had nothing better to do anyway. All of a sudden, fireworks shot up into the sky in the western part of the stronghold for some reason. The brilliant fireworks made crackling sounds as they burst open in the sky and emitted a colorful glow. This loud sound caused all of the stronghold residents to look to the west. Not far away, a flash suddenly came from a tall building just as the fireworks exploded in the sky. A member of Midnight was immediately killed on Xianyang Street. Ren Xiaosu quickly shifted his scope and saw that that building was the most ideal location for shooting. With a firing distance of 600 meters, it had the best view of that building at Xianyang Street. A young man was lying on the roof of the building. It looked like he was already taking aim at his next target. Ren Xiaosu could even tell that the sniper was using a Blazer R93 Tactical. 1. The best feature of this gun was that the bolt-action design allowed for much steadier follow-up shots. Bang! Another shot rang out from 600 meters away. Then another member of Midnight was sniped dead before they could even find a place to take cover. Ren Xiaosu pondered this for a moment and realized snipers were actually among the A-rank hitmen. In truth, it was rather expensive to train a sniper these days. Meanwhile, this sniper who could maintain his accuracy even though he was firing continuously and at such a fast rate was definitely not an amateur. He might even previously be the trump card of a certain elite unit. But how could the Pyro Company be so easy to deal with? No matter how powerful and sneaky a sniper was, how could they possibly wipe out the entirety of Midnight on their own? But before Ren Xiaosu could dwell further on it, he suddenly saw through his scope a person climbing up the building across from where the sniper was located with his bare hands. In an instant, the sniper was attacked and killed by the person. This person's speed and strength were far superior to the Midnight squad that Ren Xiaosu had previously fought. Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. The information provided by the Anjing house was erroneous. It turned out there was more than one team from the Pyro Company here, and they actually had a contingency plan too. Moreover, it was a technologically advanced fighting force that was lying in ambush. The members of Midnight that were shot by the sniper were merely bait. Seeing that the member of the Pyro Company on the opposite building had killed the sniper, Ren Xiaosu got an ominous feeling. Wasn't it said the Pyro Company's fighting forces always consisted of 5 people per team? Then where were the other combatants? When he looked at the member of the Pyro Company on the opposite building through his scope, that combatant suddenly turned around and grinned at him. Then he made a throat-slitting gesture. In that instant, another person pounced from the edge of the building onto the rooftop where Ren Xiaosu was. The enemy was dressed in black, and it was as though he had merged with the night. But an even darker shadow suddenly appeared from the darkness beside him. When the shadow raised the black saber in its hand and slashed, it cut the approaching member of the Pyro Company in half. From the beginning to the end, Ren Xiaosu did not even turn around to look. He continued to maintain his steady breathing. Distance, 617 meters. Wind speed, 15 meters per second. Humidity. The moment the opponent made that throat-slitting gesture, Ren Xiaosu pulled the trigger with a sneer. From a distance like this, the firepower of his anti-materiel sniper rifle, too, was enough to ignore any external factors, unless strong winds were blowing. With a shot, the exhaust from the sides of the gun swept up the dust around Ren Xiaosu. Meanwhile, that member of the Pyro Company was sent flying backwards by the huge inertia of the bullet. Ren Xiaosu was afraid his enemy would be wearing a bulletproof vest, so he even resorted to using armor-piercing bullets that could shoot through tanks. Seeing that the enemy was utterly dead now, Ren Xiaosu stowed his gun and muttered, "What the fuck is with your posturing?" Ren Xiaosu quickly moved in another direction as he said that. As the gunshot was incredibly loud, it would attract the attention of many people. Meanwhile, 3 members of that advanced fighting force from the Pyro Company still had not shown themselves. Chapter 484 Breaking Free from Fate. Ren Xiaosu had only entered Stronghold 63 because he wanted to take a look at the commotion that would be happening. After all, he would not get any reward for completing the A-rank mission. Meanwhile, it was clear the Anjing house had had a feud with the Pyro Company for some time. As such, he was unwilling to get embroiled in this dispute. But that member of the advanced fighting force from the Pyro Company had to make that provocation and even sent someone after him. This could not be tolerated. Ren Xiaosu put away his sniper rifle and relocated to another position. As he left, he continued observing Xianyang Street. He was surprised to see an old sugar painter, sitting by the roadside boiling sugar syrup to make snacks for children. He suddenly reached into the pot with his ladle and scooped out a spoonful of caramelized sugar. Then he quickly painted something on an aluminum plate in front of him with the large ladle. In the blink of an eye, the old man finished drawing a lifelike peacock. Right after, the sugary peacock on the aluminum plate suddenly flapped its wings and flew up into the sky. The peacock drawn with sugar syrup had actually come to life. The amber-colored peacock flying in the sky immediately pounced in front of the remaining 3 members of Midnight. However, the old man did not stop there as he reached into the pot with his ladle again. He scooped out another spoonful of golden syrup and painted a dragon on the aluminum plate. Ren Xiaosu was taken aback for a moment. This was the first time he had seen such a magical superpower. It seemed possible to draw anything as long as one believed it was alive. When he was observing through his scope earlier, he thought the old man was just a normal artisan. There were even many children who went to buy the old man's sugar paintings, and everything looked very normal at that time. But now, He displayed an even more magnificent side of the superhuman world to Ren Xiaosu. The amber dragon did not attack Midnight but stood close guard next to the old man. Then he started drawing a tiger. However, Ren Xiaosu felt the old man might be reaching his limits soon. He seemed to be having difficulties as he painted the tiger. At this moment, 5 people suddenly jumped out of a window from a nearby residential building and surrounded the old man. Ren Xiaosu was shocked. This should also be the Pyro Company's contingency plan, right? In that instant, Ren Xiaosu realized the Pyro Company's Midnight Squad had actually been used as bait to capture the superhumans who came to encircle them. Across the entire alliance of strongholds, everyone knew the Pyro Company was particularly interested in superhumans. And Ren Xiaosu had already faced Midnight before. What they really wanted was the genetic data of superhumans. They wanted to create even more powerful human beings, and this was the evolutionary path they had chosen. Therefore, this mission might appear on the surface like it was the Anjing House looking to exterminate the Pyro Company. But actually, it was a trap set by the Pyro Company to kill their superhumans. Although the Pyro Company used to have a presence in the southwest, King Zhen had clearly expressed his disgust for them. He even fought a tough battle with the Pyro Company and drove them out of the southwest. Hence, the influence the Pyro Company had in the southwest was extremely weak. The enemy they faced there was King Zhen, someone who controlled an entire military and was skilled at war. But here in the Central Plains, the Pyro Company called this their territory. Furthermore, the Pyro Company seemed to have an endless number of genetically enhanced soldiers. They possessed a stable way of creating superhumans, and it was an advantage no other organization could compare with. Actually, only the Qinghe group could compare with them. However, it seemed the Qinghe group didn't possess a lot of superhumans, and they did not really care about the competition for resources in the region either. Usually, they would not attack others unless they were provoked. Furthermore, they did not hold any political stances. Ren Xiaosu had already jumped over to another rooftop. He could hear footsteps behind him shuttling between the roofs, and they belonged to the members of the Pyro Company who were chasing after him. His opponents were getting closer and closer. The entirety of Stronghold 63 was in chaos now. When the residents on the streets who were enjoying their nightlife heard the gunshots, they quickly fled from the scene of the assassination while screaming. The night became chaotic, and even the colorful neon lights suddenly appeared dull and depressing. All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu came to a stop. He pulled out his large, black sniper rifle again and aimed it at the members of the Pyro Company who had surrounded the old man. As he was moving at a very rapid pace while fleeing, his heart rate had increased. He took a deep breath. The moment before the sniper pulled the trigger, the hormones, blood, muscles, and heart in their body would all have to serve the will. At that time, even the chaotic night sky would come to a standstill. Ren Xiaosu pulled the trigger and a thick layer of smoke burst out from the muzzle with a bang. As the bullet passed through the rifling of the barrel, it started spinning rapidly, carrying with it a huge amount of kinetic energy. In the rifling, the grooves were the spaces that were cut out, and the resulting ridges were called lands. In the black sniper rifle's barrel, the perfect angle and twist rate made the bullet start spinning the moment it was fired out of the chamber. This allowed the bullet to break free from any external restrictions with its immense kinetic energy and let the shot go further and more accurately. It was breaking free from fate. The elongated bullet passed through the gap between two buildings and squarely hit a member of the Pyro Company. The spinning bullet quickly penetrated through his muscles, and the massive friction of the bullet ripped the muscle fibers like it was cotton. Death. Through the scope, Ren Xiaosu saw a young man in a black suit and white shirt on Xianyang Street break off the pole of a metal street lamp on the side of the road with a wave of his hand. Then it floated over next to him as though it were a weapon. But before he could rush to the old man's rescue, he realized a sniper was helping them kill their enemies. The young man was stunned for a moment before asking through his earpiece, "Did we send any other snipers here?" Someone replied through the earpiece, "No, there's only one A-rank sniper who accepted the mission, but he's already dead. But the sniper who opened fire just now avenged him." "That's strange. Where did that sniper come from then?" The young man looked in the direction of where the bullet came from, but that building was already empty. Suddenly, another 3 figures flashed across the roof of that building. The young man said worriedly into his earpiece, "I'll take care of the Pyro Company members on Xianyang Street first. The sniper to my 7 o'clock is being pursued by 3 members of Dusk. Can anyone go to his aid? It's too late, he's too far away from us. Everyone stopped talking. Due to the distance, they could only pray the sniper would get lucky and not be caught by the members of the Pyro Company. The battle was chaotic. Even the Anjing House members could not fully understand what was happening on the battlefield. There were not many talents like King Zhen in the world who were strategic geniuses, after all. Most people only knew how to adapt their plans as the battle developed. It didn't matter if it was the Anjing House or the Pyro Company, they were all the same. However, neither of them could have expected that the sniper who had appeared out of nowhere would become the key to turning the tide of the situation. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu was frequently jumping across various buildings as he fled all the way west. But a second later, he halted in his tracks. It was not that he could not run anymore, but that he did not want to continue running. Chapter 485 No More Running. Ever since he escaped from Stronghold 146, Ren Xiaosu had not experienced getting chased by anyone in the past 2 months. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was odd. Didn't he only come here to watch the commotion? Why did the Pyro Company start chasing after him then? Although he had shot and killed another member of the Pyro Company just now, they were the ones who attacked first. I might have been holding a sniper rifle on the roof, but it was only because the view was clearer through the scope. I really did not intend to attack anyone. I don't care whether you believe it or not, I only wanted to have a look. So since I was only here to have a look, and you all tried to attack me, I'm forced to fight back. In the entirety of Stronghold 63, it was estimated that there were only 10 people from the Pyro Company's advanced fighting force in total. However, the Pyro Company ended up splitting half of their forces to attack him even though the Anjing House was the one attacking them. Who was he supposed to bring the attention of this injustice to? Ren Xiaosu thought about it carefully. Could he defeat the 3 members of the Pyro Company? Yes. When he thought of this, Ren Xiaosu wondered why the hell he should keep running. Ren Xiaosu came to a stop on the roof of a building. The 3 members of the Pyro Company were chasing after him in a triangular formation when they saw Ren Xiaosu stop in his tracks and were bewildered. Although they did not witness how Ren Xiaosu killed their comrades earlier, they knew he must be an extremely powerful supernatural being if he could kill 2 members of the Dusk Squad in a row. As the 3 members of Dusk came to a gradual stop, the 2 sides were now facing each other on the roofs of 2 buildings, separated by a gap of more than 20 meters. Ren Xiaosu's fighting spirit was so fired up that it felt like an intimidating presence that could fill people's hearts with fear. Suddenly, the 3 members of Dusk were a little afraid to chase after him anymore. Thinking about it calmly now, the 3 of them had only pursued the enemy when they saw him running away just now. But now that they had caught up to him, they were finally able to consider if they could defeat him or not. As sirens rang out in the distance, a continuous stream of Stronghold 63 security forces started heading over to encircle the area. They were looking to capture all the members of the Anjing House and the Pyro Company in the Stronghold. The 3 Dusk members looked at each other and got ready to make a move. No matter how powerful their opponent was, he was all by himself at this moment. As they were genetically modified super soldiers, how could they not take care of one person if the 3 of them attacked all at once? We can't wait any longer. If we don't kill him today, we'll be seen as defective goods when we return. Kill him. But before they could come to a decision, they saw Ren Xiaosu slowly take a few steps back. The 3 Dusk members wondered, is he going to run away again? Then they unexpectedly saw Ren Xiaosu starting to charge towards them from the opposite building. Those few steps back that he took were actually to facilitate his run-up. Open fire. The 3 of them aimed their silenced guns at Ren Xiaosu and started shooting rapidly. With their physiques, they could easily match Ren Xiaosu's movement speed as they kept their aim on him. But before they could even pull the trigger, Ren Xiaosu's armor immediately covered his entire body. In the eyes of the 3 Pyro Company members, the figure leaping over from the opposite rooftop gradually got larger. Then it suddenly turned into an indestructible armored being that no one could lay a finger on. This turn of events was really shocking. When the bullets from the pistols hit the armor, they could only leave behind a white mark without causing any substantial damage. Wait, it's him, a member of the Pyro Company roared, what's he doing here? After the battle in the northwest, any organization that had paid attention to the situation there would know there was a young man who could conjure up a set of armor and had single-handedly destroyed a stronghold. Any organization with ambition would have to keep abreast of such developments, after all. Although the Northwest was a remote place, it would be extremely stupid of them if they did not even know about an important development like that. Not only that, but they also had to purchase the information and intel regarding this young man from the various secret intelligence organizations. But to their surprise, the two secret intelligence organizations that were usually the most familiar with the happenings in the Southwest and Northwest expressed they did not have any specific information about this young man. After Fortress 178 marched into Stronghold 146, the first thing they did was not to take over the resources of the stronghold but to search for all of the wanted portraits of that young man and destroy them. When the members of the Pyro Company realized the enemy they were facing turned out to be that legendary figure, they immediately turned gloomy. One of them shouted into their radio, "We've encountered." Before he could finish speaking, a black shadow dashed into them from behind. The black saber pierced the chest of the person speaking, and blood instantly filled the alveoli of his lungs. When he tried to speak, blood started gushing out of his throat. The remaining two people quickly fled in two different directions. Their speed was comparable to that of the best among superhumans and might even be a tad faster than them. In an instant, their powerful brains figured out the best escape routes. However, they were shocked to find they could only cover 2 steps before they were quickly caught up to. Although they were fast, Ren Xiaosu was even faster. Even without activating City Crusher, Ren Xiaosu's physical fitness had almost placed him above all the other members of Dusk. As fireworks shot up into the rousing night sky again, the chaotic mixture of sirens, gunshots, screams, and shouts filled Stronghold 63 with the smell of blood and smoke. Ren Xiaosu and the Shadow Clone brushed past each other as the two figures blocked the two escaping members of Dusk separately. Their movements were so exact that they looked like two sets of synchronized machines. Since he had used his armor here, he could not allow any of the Pyro Company members present to leave alive. Seeing that these two members of Dusk had jumped off either side of the roof to the other roofs, Ren Xiaosu and his Shadow Clone jumped after them. The strong force they generated as they leaped off from the rooftop even shattered the waterproof layer of the rooftop. When Ren Xiaosu got ahead of the Dusk member in midair, he turned around and slashed his saber. His opponent had wanted to pull out a saber from his belt to block the slash, but Ren Xiaosu pressed down on his hand in the air. No matter how hard he tried, he could not draw the saber from his belt. Then Ren Xiaosu stabbed the black saber into his heart fast as lightning. "Why are you so strong?" This was the only thought the member of Dusk had before he died. Ren Xiaosu kicked off him in midair and flew towards the roof on the opposite building. Due to the great inertia, he slid for 5 to 6 meters on the building's rooftop on one knee before finally stopping. Meanwhile, his Shadow Clone on the other side was even more efficient at killing its victim. Even Ren Xiaosu had to admit that his Shadow Clone's physical fitness was much stronger than his. Ren Xiaosu panted as he recalled his Shadow Clone while he stood on the rooftop. Afterwards, he quickly fled the stronghold. After experiencing so much tonight, he had no need to risk his life here anymore. As for who would come out victorious in the battle between the Anjing House and the Pyro Company, that had nothing to do with him. Chapter 486 Leaving with a flick of his robes after the deed is done, deeply hiding his glory and fame. Ren Xiaosu felt that copying the power of the Shadow Clone was the wisest choice he had made ever since he was able to duplicate the superpowers of other supernatural beings. Having lived in this chaotic world for so long, his Shadow Clone had achieved many great feats for him. Without it, Ren Xiaosu could not have done many things. Of course, the Shadow Clone also had its shortcomings. For example, it could not use the sniper rifle independently since it couldn't calculate the complex trajectory of a shot and other external factors. As such, the accuracy of its shots had always been poor. When Ren Xiaosu left the stronghold, he even went past the troops of Stronghold 63 that were heading over to encircle the enemy. However, the soldiers below could not see him at all as he was leaping across the roofs of buildings. A superhuman who was among the troops suddenly looked up into the sky. He had a feeling that something had leaped over their heads. However, the other party was moving too fast, so he thought he might have been hallucinating. Did you all see anything unusual over our heads just now? The superhuman asked. No, the soldiers shook their heads. Forget it, let's deal with the problem at Xianyang Street first. If we encounter any resistance, kill on sight. Set up checkpoints at all the main thoroughfares. After escaping from the stronghold, Ren Xiaosu did not even bother staying in town to watch. He just continued running all the way into the wilderness. If he was going to leave, he would have to do so decisively. So Ren Xiaosu decided to head straight for Stronghold 61 where he could wait and see while things settled down. On the way, he even received a C-rank mission that was to be carried out in Stronghold 63. However, he instantly decided he would give that up this time. Hitmen had to complete 3 C-rank missions within 90 days before they would get automatically promoted to B rank. But Ren Xiaosu thought that since Stronghold 63 was already such a mess, he would not want to go back there to carry out that mission no matter what. At this moment on Xianyang Street, the amber-colored dragon that was painted from the sugar syrup grabbed a member of Dusk and threw him into its mouth. Then it crushed the enemy's bones to pieces. Only one of the 3 remaining members of Midnight was left. He was still firing his weapon and trying to shatter the golden dragon. But even as the amber dragon was hit by the bullets, it only shed bits and pieces of sugar while still maintaining its ability to fly. Meanwhile, the tiger the old man had just painstakingly painted stood guard next to him. The old man said palely, "I can't hold on much longer. Quickly finish him off." Although the peacock, dragon, and tiger all looked extremely ferocious, the old man was already at his limits. To be honest, he did not expect another team of Dusk members to ambush them from nearby. This old man was only an A-rank hitman. He was also only risking his life this time for the sake of joining the Anjing house. Next to him, the young man who could manipulate metal said with a smile, "Please calm down, old man. They don't have a way out anymore." The young man strolled towards Dusk along the empty boulevard. One of the members of Dusk tried to shoot him, but his gun flew out of his hand and floated in front of the young man. Then the Dusk member tried to draw the saber from his belt, but even that was seized by the young man. The leader of Dusk sneered, "Vanilla, it's such a pity that we failed to finish you off the previous time." The young man named Vanilla said with a smile, "That just means that the heavens haven't failed me. You didn't expect that I would appear here, right? Remember to bring a ceramic saber next time." The moment he finished saying that, all the sabers and metallic objects floating next to Vanilla flew towards Dusk. But at this moment, the members of Dusk revealed their extremely powerful physiques. The metallic objects that were rapidly flying over could not even touch their bodies once they dodged. Although Vanilla could manipulate metal, and even a large quantity of them at once, the speed at which he controlled the metal was still not fast enough. However, the remaining 3 members of Dusk decisively turned around and started retreating after dodging Vanilla's attack. Meanwhile, the young man who could manipulate metal did not chase after them. The old man panted and said, "Why didn't you finish him off? There will naturally be supernatural beings from Stronghold 63 who will encircle them. If we go after them, how are we gonna get out of this place?" Vanilla smiled and said, "We need them to attract the attention of Stronghold 63 right now. Besides, haven't you realized that I couldn't land a hit on them at all? Alright then, I'm going to retreat as well." The old man said, "All the members of Midnight have already been killed, along with a member of Dusk as well." Vanilla said with a smile, "Don't worry, the boss will definitely reward you accordingly." At this moment, he heard a voice speaking in his earpiece. Vanilla was stunned for a moment before saying to the old man with a smile, "Congratulations, 1,383,792. The boss has said you can participate in the next round of trials to gain entry into the Anjing house. You may come with me to the safe house now." The old man was surprised. "Really? The Anjing house has never made promises lightly, so please follow me. Once you've officially joined the Anjing house, you will get your own code name. To be honest, it's really quite difficult to remember your current name and number." Vanilla turned around and walked off. The pursuit in Stronghold 63 would still continue for some time, and there would be 2 or 3 superhumans involved in the chase. In Vanilla's opinion, the Pyro Company members would suffer terribly even if they did not die. As the Anjing house had been dealing with the Pyro Company for a long time, they were not in a hurry to eliminate them. In fact, neither side was able to do this now, so they could only slowly scheme against each other. After they left, a few sporadic paper cranes started flying around in the night sky. Some of them quietly tailed the Pyro Company members while the rest went to the places Ren Xiaosu had fought at. The paper cranes first went to the rooftop where Ren Xiaosu had been attacked. Then it followed Ren Xiaosu's escape route all the way to the place where he had killed 3 members of Dusk. The small and delicate paper cranes circled around the rooftop, as though they were recording all the details of the location without missing any corners. Soon after, the paper cranes fluttered their wings and flew higher into the sky. They cautiously flew up several hundred meters before continuing to fly towards Stronghold 61 where they would update the information they saw to their host. A day later, someone in a house received a new text message. The more they read it, the more shocked they were. The boss said the sniper who appeared that night wiped out the entire Dusk squad. I wonder where this superhuman popped out of. Surely not, right? Didn't they say that even Vanilla could do nothing about them since they were so determined to escape? And the boss also said that this guy's an incredibly skilled sniper. It seems that he can adjust his heart rate while moving about on the battlefield. A powerful sniper who also has an extremely strong superpower in close combat. Just where did such a monster pop out of? Why haven't we heard of him before? The person reading the text said, by the way, the boss was asking if anyone went to do that C-rank mission in the vicinity when it was assigned later on. It's been completed, but not by 1,583,850. Do you think that 1,583,850 could be this superhuman? I don't think so. Why would such a ruthless superhuman bother with RD rank missions? Do you think they've got nothing better to do? Chapter 487 A Mysterious Hitman. The smoke in Stronghold 63 had already dispersed. A small battle was not enough to cause much damage to the stronghold, after all. Moreover, the civilians were not affected by the battle between the two sides, so casualties involving the stronghold residents were as good as negligible. But to the Wang Consortium, the actual controller of Stronghold 63, this was a challenge to their authority by the Anjing House and the Pyro Company. If people like the elderly Sugar Painter and Vanilla, who could manipulate metal, were to enter any strongholds under the Wang Consortium's jurisdiction again, a citywide search would be immediately triggered once they got identified by the surveillance cameras. The reason why the price for killing a target in the Wang Consortium's strongholds was so high was that most hitmen could only conduct one mission in them. Not everyone could parkour, fly over roofs and scale walls, like Ren Xiaosu. At this moment, hundreds of employees were sitting and busying themselves in a huge control room within Stronghold 62. In this control room were several hundred security monitors, and the all-white interior radiated a strong sense of technology. Wang Shengyan pushed in Wang Shengji in his wheelchair. He looked at the staff members and said with a smile, "Show me the eye report from last night. Let's see what it says." When the Anjing House assassin known as Vanilla entered the stronghold, the eye issued an early warning and signaled that this person had trespassed into the stronghold. He sneaked in on a truck that was transporting frozen pork. A staff member said, "We've already located the truck, but the owner is nowhere to be found. There's a specially modified compartment in the truck, so Vanilla must have hidden in it to enter the stronghold." With that, the staff member handed a document to Wang Shengji. The whole analysis report was fully documented. Other than that elderly Sugar Painter, the others were all identified by the surveillance and they had received advance warning of the intrusion. Wang Shengji had actually predicted a long time ago that this small battle would take place. However, the staff members did not understand why it was allowed to happen. Perhaps Wang Shengji had planned to let the Pyro Company and the Anjing House build even more resentment between their two organizations. Wang Shengji was flipping through the report when he suddenly noticed the final analysis. He saw 9 photos, and in each one of them a blurry figure was captured leaping across roofs. The staff member next to him explained, this person constantly kept his activities to the roofs and was even so cautious that he avoided all our surveillance cameras on the roofs of the buildings. These photos were only taken by a surveillance camera on a tall building in the distance after our eye spotted him. Wang Shengji nodded and looked at the follow-up analysis report. The suspect is 1.84 meters tall and possesses an unknown power. The 6 Pyro Company members who died that night were likely killed by this person. This includes 1 member of Midnight and 5 members of Dusk. This suspect is extremely dangerous, and it is recommended that we go all out to pursue him. Did you manage to find any trace of this person's whereabouts after that? Wang Shengji asked while looking up. No, the staff member shook his head. The eye's analysis showed that he should have already fled from the stronghold. Is he a member of the Anjing house? Wang Shengji asked. No, please turn to the last page of the report. The eye analyzed all the participants of the battle and which organization they belong to. He's the only one with no known links to any organization, the staff member said while shaking his head. Wang Shengyan looked curiously at the blurry figure while standing behind Wang Shengji. She said, "Why do I feel like this person looks so familiar? It's as if I've seen him somewhere before." Everyone looked at Wang Shengyan in a stunned manner, only to see her shaking her head and saying with a laugh, "The pictures are too blurry, so I probably mistook it for someone else." Wang Shengji shook his head and said with a smile, "Since this person is classified as extremely dangerous by the eye, we must be careful when we find him next time." When Ren Xiaosu returned to Stronghold 61, he did not head home immediately but went to the tavern instead. Ren Xiaosu had not had a warm meal for several days, so he needed to get something to eat first. Before he even reached the tavern, Ren Xiaosu could already see Muz Xiaolu sitting by the window from a distance. It seemed like she was folding something on the table with her head down. When she heard the sound of footsteps, she looked up and saw Ren Xiaosu. But just as Ren Xiaosu was about to greet her, he heard Xiaolu shout before sweeping everything on the table into her arms. Then she ran into the backyard of the tavern. Ren Xiaosu could only wave at the air with his raised hand. As he walked into the tavern, the storyteller was relating a story to the customers. Everyone here might not know that something major has taken place in Stronghold 63. It's said that the Pyro Company and Anjing House have been at loggerheads with each other for a long time, so both sides laid a trap for the other at Stronghold 63. The Pyro Company wanted to capture the superhumans of the Anjing House, while the Anjing House was looking to take down the Pyro Company members in one fell swoop. An old man was seen waving his hand over an aluminum plate, and it turned out that the dragon he painted with some sugar syrup ended up soaring into the sky. Ren Xiaosu was stunned when he heard this. The incident at Stronghold 63 had just happened 2 days ago, but the storyteller already knew about it. However, he was not too bothered by it. After all, he already knew this storyteller was no ordinary person, and he was not particularly concerned about where his intel came from either. It happened that he also wanted to hear how the news in the outside world portrayed this skirmish. The storyteller continued, however, the Pyro Company and the Anjing House were not the protagonists of this battle. It was someone else. In the battle, although the Pyro Company had sent out a total of 15 members, a mysterious visitor ended up killing 6 of them single-handedly. Ren Xiaosu listened to the story and realized he was involved in at least half of the storyteller's tale. At this moment, Xiaolu re-entered the tavern from the backyard. She sat down across from Ren Xiaosu and asked casually, "Did you see what I was doing just now?" No. After ordering a bowl of lamb stew from the waiter, Ren Xiaosu smiled and said, "So what were you doing just now?" "Nothing much." Xiaolu changed the subject, "You should quickly go home and have a look after you've eaten. Recently, the townspeople have been saying that your yard is haunted. There's always the sound of people howling and screaming in there in the middle of the night, but no one dares to go in and check it out since they're afraid of being devoured by the ghosts." Ren Xiaosu froze. How could a spooky event like this happen to him? But after a brief pause, he roughly understood what was going on. Ren Xiaosu asked, "Were there any other strange occurrences in town lately?" Xiaolu sneaked a glance at the storyteller before whispering, "Don't tell Grandpa that I was the one who told you. You had better be more careful these days. It seems that someone's been looking for you, but Grandpa helped you to hide the truth." Ren Xiaosu grinned from ear to ear. "Thank you. Grandpa didn't want me to tell you, so you must not tell him about this." Xiaolu happily lowered her voice and reminded him. A ways away, the storyteller was midway through the story. His voice clearly paused for a moment, and he nearly forgot about the latter part of the story that he was telling. What the hell was going on? Chapter 488 inclined towards certain subjects. Someone once mentioned that when one of the 5 senses of a person is switched off, the other senses become heightened. These 5 senses referred to sight, smell, hearing, taste, and touch. The human body did not only have 5 senses but also a legendary 6th sense, which was the soul. Some people asked, do humans really have souls? Can humans really exist in the form of a soul or even have the ability to influence reality? Someone had once tried to gradually switch off the taste, hearing, sight, and so on with each passing year. After switching off his senses one by one, the remaining senses would be greatly enhanced. It was as though those deactivated senses ended up being concentrated on one sense, the sense of touch. Then, at the moment when his emotions fluctuated the most violently, he ended his life, thus effectively ending his sense of touch as well. Some people said that from that moment on, he existed only in the form of a soul, which was also the 6th sense. But no one could verify this since no one had ever seen the soul of that extreme person before. Getting back to the topic of the 5 senses, some people's hearing would become exceptionally good after they went blind. However, this was uncommon. Instead, people who went blind usually ended up with a better memory than that of able people. The storyteller was the type who had great hearing and memory, so he could hear very clearly what Xiaolu said to Ren Xiaosu. His granddaughter was actually whispering secrets to an outsider while trying to keep it from him. After eating, Ren Xiaosu slowly walked back home. Although he was now a familiar face in town, the impression that most people had was that he was someone rich. Previously, it was not only the refugees who came to seek help from him. There were also others from the world's oldest profession that came knocking on his door in the middle of the night offering their services. However, he rejected all of them. Sometimes he would just drive them away without even opening the door. As for the spooky event Xiaolu had mentioned, he already guessed what was going on. Seeing that the lock on his house door was still intact, Ren Xiaosu opened the door with his key and headed straight for the backyard. There, he saw 5 people lying on the ground and smashed potatoes everywhere. These 5 people were all normal people, and they were long dead from the potato shooters' attacks. However, Ren Xiaosu did not feel the least bit distraught when he saw a few bone knives scattered around the backyard. If a normal person were living here, they would probably have been killed by these people. Everyone in town knew Ren Xiaosu was rich, so there would always be thieves trying to enter his house every now and then. In the past, Ren Xiaosu would have to kill them himself, then put their bodies away in his storage space and take them to the wilderness to bury. But now, he did not have to do that anymore. The potato shooters would help him do all the dirty work. The haunting was probably just the screams of these intruders when they got hit by the potato shooters after climbing into the backyard. When Ren Xiaosu thought about it, he also felt that it must have been eerie that night. A newly established recruitment office in town was offering high pay to workers to build roads. Fortress 178 and the Wang Consortium had reached a consensus. The roads in the Central Plains would soon be extended to the northwest, and there would be a highway for vehicles and a railway leading to the former Zong Consortium strongholds. Due to the frozen ground, they could not build the railway further into the depths of the hinterlands of the northwest. Construction would get too difficult, and the maintenance cost would be extremely high. All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu received another text message. The targets in Stronghold 61 are from the Pyro Company's Midnight Squad. They are currently located in a residential building on 137 Lingbao Road. A rank. Reward, 1 million yuan. Up to 5 people can work in a group for the mission, and all will receive rights to use the safe house and be protected by us upon being pursued by the enemy. Ren Xiaosu was stunned. This mission was very similar to the mission that took place in Stronghold 63 a few days ago. Moreover, the Anjing House increased the difficulty and reward of the mission this time. Previously, the mission allowed hitmen to work in groups of 3, but that had expanded to a group of 5 this time. Actually, the number of hitmen working together was not important. All it meant was that this mission's reward would be given out as 5 sets. It looked like the Anjing House was going all out against the Pyro Company this time. They had issued another mission with them as targets again this soon. Suddenly, it felt like these 2 heavyweight organizations were going to fight each other to the death. It could also be because the ambush enraged the Anjing House and made them determined to clear out the Pyro Company from the Wang Consortium's territory at all costs. However, Ren Xiaosu did not plan on getting involved this time. He realized that every time he tried to stay out of something, trouble would automatically come looking for him even if he were just watching the commotion as a spectator. He had caused too much of a commotion in Stronghold 63. If the Anjing House and the Pyro Company came looking for him together, he would be in deep trouble. Furthermore, who knew if the Anjing House might have issued this mission at Stronghold 61 because they were trying to flush him out? How else could there be such a coincidence? Therefore, Ren Xiaosu decided he would just stay home and catch up on sleep. In the evening, the sound of gunfire suddenly came from the stronghold. There were even loud explosions too, and this woke Ren Xiaosu up. However, he headed to the tavern for dinner as though nothing had happened. When he arrived at the tavern, the storyteller was resting and eating dinner. It was nothing too special, just a bowl of biang-biang noodles. 1. Ren Xiaosu smiled and said, "Where's Xiaolu?" The storyteller did not answer him. Instead, he asked in turn, "Aren't you going into the stronghold to have a look?" "Why would I go in there? I don't want to get involved in that mess." Ren Xiaosu chuckled as he said to the waiter, "I'll have a bowl of biang-biang noodles, make it extra spicy. I heard that y'all purchased fresh watermelons. Cut one for us, I'll have some together with Grandpa here." The storyteller stared at Ren Xiaosu with his cloudy eyes. "Haven't you already had your fair share of messy situations?" "Only when I'm forced by circumstance," Ren Xiaosu said with a laugh. All of a sudden, the storyteller asked, "Let me ask you a question. If a watermelon is cut into 3 pieces, each portion will be 0.333, right?" Ren Xiaosu was stunned. "That's right. 0.333 multiplied by 3 equals 0.999. Then I ask of you, where did the remaining 0.001 go?" The storyteller asked calmly. Ren Xiaosu thought for a moment. "It's on the knife. Yes, it's on the knife." The storyteller paused for a while. "You're indeed inclined towards certain subjects." Ren Xiaosu suddenly turned serious. He was only fooling around earlier. Of course he knew about the recurring decimal sequence, too. But about being inclined towards certain subjects, didn't that rumor come from the Northwest? The storyteller was obviously referring to something else by bringing that up. Ren Xiaosu asked calmly, "So Grandpa already knows who I am?" People always say that only fearsome dragons cross the river, but how many river-crossing dragons can there be in the world? The storyteller slurped up the remaining noodles in his bowl. "I'm warning you, a dangerous person like you better not get near my granddaughter." Then Xiaolu came in from the backyard with a watermelon. "Grandpa, the waiter said that you wanted to eat some watermelon. I've already cut some for you." The storyteller threw his chopsticks on the table, as if the watermelon was cut for me. Chapter 489 Reacquainted with Zhou Yingzu. Ren Xiaosu didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the storyteller's words. Since when did he get any ideas about his granddaughter? That was absolutely untrue, all right. But at this moment, the two of them noticed the intensity of the battle in the stronghold did not decrease even after such a long time. Instead, it seemed to be getting even more intense. Ren Xiaosu understood that the previous battle at Stronghold 63 had only ended so quickly because of his sudden involvement. After all, the members of Dusk were not weak. If typical superhumans encountered them, they might even end up dying at their hands. The Pyro Company's fighting forces had always had a huge advantage due to their numbers, probably because they could mass-produce them. Ren Xiaosu suddenly sighed and said, "An eye for an eye makes the world go blind." But the storyteller, who was listening intently to the sound of the fighting, replied with a serious look, "This is not about vengeance but a struggle between the ideals of those two organizations. You have to understand that without their ideals, they would not be known as an organization." Ren Xiaosu was stunned. Perhaps that was the source of King Zhen and the saboteurs' conflict as well. King Zhen saw nuclear technology as a gift from nature and felt that humans should make good use of it. However, the saboteurs felt that humans should not possess a weapon that was powerful enough to destroy themselves with. That was because there were no bounds to humanity's greed and they would never be satisfied with what they had. Even if King Zhen could ensure that he would not use them, could he do the same for his descendants? If those gruff men of Fortress 178 did not have the belief to guard their stronghold, they probably would not have such strong willpower either. However, it was not something Ren Xiaosu should be considering right now. He never got the idea of establishing an organization before, so these were not things he needed to care about. The battle was getting louder and louder. It was so loud that even the refugees in town stopped in their tracks outside the stronghold walls to watch what would happen next. A raging fire was burning inside the stronghold. The blazing flames in the sky were so bright that the red glow illuminated the faces of the refugees dressed in rags. It seems the Anjing house has not gained the upper hand in the battle yet, the storyteller said with a sigh. Ren Xiaosu asked, Grandpa, are you on the side of the Anjing house? The storyteller said with a smile, normal people would find it very difficult to have a good impression of organizations like the Pyro Company. No matter how good they might have been in the past, the current Pyro Company has already gone astray on the path of genetic evolution. Do you mean that the Pyro Company used to be good? Ren Xiaosu asked. Apparently, even though they were also somewhat extreme during the pre-cataclysm times, they would still show some restraint in their behavior. The storyteller said, when the world lost order after the cataclysm, their ambitions started growing too rapidly. Ren Xiaosu muttered, but it doesn't feel like they're that powerful. The storyteller was left speechless for a moment. He snapped, how can you say that they aren't powerful when they're an organization that controls 10 strongholds and has a ripple effect on the entire alliance of strongholds? You only think that they aren't powerful because you've killed several of their members before. But what if you're facing 100 members of their advanced fighting forces? An organization that can mass-produce super soldiers should never be judged based on the strength of an individual soldier. You have to multiply that by the numbers they have. Ren Xiaosu smacked his lips. All right. As soon as his voice trailed off, Ren Xiaosu suddenly heard the voice from the palace state, quest, take in an injured person for 3 days. Ren Xiaosu was stunned. It had probably been 2 months since he heard the palace assign him a quest. As a matter of fact, ever since he encountered the superhumans who could manipulate metal and summon a painted dragon at Stronghold 63 a few days ago, he became really eager to learn their powers. If he had that dragon painting power, it could come in quite handy to entertain his children with in the future. Perhaps he had gotten a little too far ahead of himself. Even though he wanted to learn those powers, he could not do anything without a perfect skill duplication scroll. Hence, the palace's quests were essential. But there had to be a reason why the palace would suddenly assign him a quest to take in someone who was injured. Ren Xiaosu got up to leave. The storyteller asked from behind him, where are you going? Didn't you say that you don't want to get involved in that mess? Ren Xiaosu snapped, I'm going home to sleep. He wasn't looking to get involved in any chaos, but based on what the palace had said, it was a clear sign that trouble had come looking for him instead. On his way back home, Ren Xiaosu kept walking past other refugees who were watching the ruckus from town. As the refugees did not have any activities to keep them entertained at night, they really hoped the fighting would go on for longer when they saw a battle going on in the stronghold. After all, those big shots responsible for stirring up trouble had always looked down on the townspeople. Even if battles broke out occasionally, the hostile forces would not do anything to the refugees. That was because they still needed refugees to work for them, as they could not let the factories go unmanned. When Ren Xiaosu arrived at the entrance of his home, he first checked the main door and found that the padlock was still intact. However, he caught a whiff of a sweet, metallic odor coming from the inside the house through the gap in the door. It was the smell of blood. He opened the door with his key calmly. But as soon as he pushed open the door, he saw a pathetic figure attack him with a dagger from inside the house. To Ren Xiaosu's further surprise, 2 vines sprouted out from the ground as though they were trying to grab a hold of his ankles. But the attacker seemed to have aggravated a wound with this surprise attack on Ren Xiaosu. This caused the attacker to lose control of their movement, and the vines that sprouted out of the ground also withered away. Ren Xiaosu easily grabbed the attacker's wrist that was brandishing a dagger at him. However, he gasped when he realized the wrist was very slender. It turned out this was a woman's wrist. However, Ren Xiaosu was not really someone who would go soft on women. He immediately landed a knife hand strike on the attacker's carotid artery so he could properly size her up afterwards. However, he was surprised by what he saw. The attacker turned out to be an old acquaintance of his. Zhou Yingzu. Why would that Yang Consortium spy, who had tried to get close to him by seducing him at Stronghold 88 only to end up jumping rope with him, appear here? And she even looked like she had been seriously injured. When Stronghold 88 was destroyed, Ren Xiaosu had also apprehended Zhou Yingzu. But at that time, she had anxiously pleaded with him to allow her to go save her mother. As such, he let her off after some consideration. He had not expected to encounter her again here. Ren Xiaosu carried Zhou Yingzu to the backyard and saw the potato shooters were putting on their best behavior. Zhou Yingzu probably escaped being attacked by the potato shooters due to her power to manipulate plants. Zhou Yingzu had even controlled 2 vines on the ground to attack Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu snapped at the potato shooters, "Did y'all not attack her just because she can manipulate plants? Why are y'all so useless?" The 5 potato shooters gently spat out a few potatoes as though they were trying to get back into Ren Xiaosu's good books. "Here, have some potatoes." Ren Xiaosu did not know whether to laugh or cry. What the hell was this? He looked at Zhou Yingzu, who he had thrown to the side. Then he listened to the gunfire that was still ringing out in the stronghold. The Wang Consortium's troops had probably been alerted now since the gunfire seemed to have only gotten even more intense. Chapter 490 The Mystery of the Mission Assignments. The fighting in the stronghold continued until late into the night, but even then, it did not stop. Ren Xiaosu could still hear gunfire coming from the stronghold in his yard every now and then. Ren Xiaosu thought that if he had not been at Stronghold 63 2 days ago, that battle would probably have also lasted this long. Fortunately, the battle in the stronghold had attracted the attention of Stronghold 61's garrison troops. Otherwise, the enemy might have already come searching for Zhou Yingzu. He wondered if Zhou Yingzu had been seen by anyone when she fled. But how should he handle Zhou Yingzu now? After he tied her up, Ren Xiaosu suddenly remembered he had also bound her like this in their last encounter. Always meeting under such circumstances just did not feel right to him. Zhou Yingzu gradually came to. When she regained consciousness, she struggled for a bit in the chair and realized she could not move. Then she looked up at Ren Xiaosu and said, "What are you trying to do? Why are you here? Are you here to arrest me? Don't tell me you've joined the Pyro Company or the Wang Consortium." "Hold it right there," Ren Xiaosu said, "this is my fucking house. You were the one who intruded into my house in the middle of the night, so how dare you ask why I'm here? Is that even appropriate? Shouldn't I be the one asking what you're doing here? What are you plotting against me?" When Zhou Yingzu heard that, she got so angry she nearly flipped. "Who was plotting against you?" But Zhou Yingzu could not understand why this was Ren Xiaosu's residence. Wasn't this place in the town outside Stronghold 61? In Zhou Yingshui's opinion, Ren Xiaosu was a much stronger supernatural being than her, so he shouldn't be living in a town like this. But she had lost too much blood and could not think straight anymore. She only barely managed to argue back, "Lie. Continue lying. How can a person like you possibly be living here?" After that, Zhou Yingzu quietly watched as Ren Xiaosu held up a key and lock. When he gently twisted the key, the padlock opened. Seemingly afraid that Zhou Yingzu could not see it clearly, Ren Xiaosu relocked the padlock and twisted the key again. Just like that, he repeated the process many times. It was like he was mocking Zhou Yingzu silently. Zhou Yingzu could feel her head starting to hurt. "Stop it, stop opening it already." She could not understand why there was such an annoying person in this world. Ren Xiaosu chuckled and said, "This is the padlock on my house door. The plants in the backyard were planted by me. The chair you're sitting in was made by a carpenter I hired. On the nightstand next to the chair are books from Stronghold 88's library that I stole, borrowed." With that, Zhou Yingzu was finally convinced. She kept quiet for a while before asking, "What are you doing here? Where did you all go after Stronghold 88 was destroyed? Were you the ones responsible for that?" Ren Xiaosu asked, "You were partly in charge of the intelligence work at the Yang Consortium, so how can you not know that it was the Li Consortium's nanosoldiers who were responsible for it? You must have encountered those soldiers that lost their minds that night, right? By the way, did you manage to save your mother?" "Yes, I got her out." When Zhou Yingzu recalled that she had only managed to save her mother because Ren Xiaosu decided to let her go, her anger subsided a little. But when Zhou Yingzu thought about it again, she felt that something was not right. Ren Xiaosu was the one who had tied her up at that time. She had just finished her grocery shopping and was about to return home to cook for her mother. However, she met this guy on the way and was knocked out by him. Zhou Yingzhu asked, "What do you want from me now?" "Come, I want you to answer some of my questions." Ren Xiaosu smiled and said, "Are you a member of the Anjing house?" "No," Zhou Yingzhu shook her head. "At least not yet." "Then you must be an A-rank hitwoman, right?" Ren Xiaosu said with a smile, "Since you're a woman, it's not convenient for me to body search you. Where do you keep your cell phone? Hand it over." Zhou Yingzhu no longer possessed the charming aura she had back at the library. Instead, she was wearing a tight-fitting, black t-shirt and a pair of pants that gave her a rather nimble look. Actually, Zhou Yingzhu was not exactly the beautiful type and could only be considered slightly above average looking. However, she possessed a certain demeanor that made her stand out. Zhou Yingzhu suddenly asked, "How do you know about the Anjing house and the contract killers?" "Ahem," Ren Xiaosu said with restraint, "Coincidentally, I'm also a contract killer myself." Zhou Yingzhu was really stunned this time. "You're also an A-rank hitman?" "No, I'm a D-rank." Ren Xiaosu took out a D-rank cell phone that he had snatched from someone but never used before. Zhou Yingzhu burst into laughter. "What, you're a D-rank? You must be kidding, right? How can a supernatural being like you be a D-rank hitman?" Ren Xiaosu said unhappily, "Is it that funny? Aren't we supposed to complete the missions and get promoted slowly? Didn't you also start off as a D-rank?" "Of course not." Zhou Yingzhu belly laughed. "When supernatural beings make the known identities, they'll be issued a new cell phone, and the missions assigned through them will also be different. You stole that phone from a D-rank hitman, right? You can't receive any A-rank missions. Also, an A-rank hitman's cell phone is matched to their fingerprints." "That can't be. I can receive A-rank missions too." Ren Xiaosu was puzzled. Hold on. Actually, he had not received any A-rank missions before. But ever since he stirred up all that trouble at Stronghold 61 and 63, he started receiving them. He took Zhou Yingshui's cell phone from her right pants pocket. Her phone was much more exquisite than his, and the camera's quality was also clearer. There was also an area reserved for the fingerprint scanner to unlock the cell phone. So was he only receiving information about the A-rank missions because the Anjing house had given him special treatment after realizing he was the one who stirred up all that trouble? If so, he would have to be more careful when he performed his missions from now on. Although he could also get promoted to A rank by declaring himself to the Anjing house that he was a supernatural being like Zhou Yingzhu, he did not want to expose his identity. He had thought about stealing an A rank hitman's cell phone, but the Anjing house required A rank hitmen to switch to new cell phones that had fingerprint verification software. Each A rank hitman would get a phone that could only be unlocked specifically by them. Therefore, every killer needed to change to a new cell phone after they got promoted to A rank. If he had to swap for a new phone, he would have to deal directly with an Anjing house member to get his fingerprinted set up. Wouldn't his identity still get exposed? Ren Xiaosu asked, "Did a member of the Anjing house personally hand you your new cell phone?" "No," Zhou Yingzhu shook her head. "It was delivered to me by a white paper crane. The Anjing house has never questioned the identities of the hitmen. Whether they wish to keep their identities secret or publicize it, that's all up to them." Realization dawned upon Ren Xiaosu. So that's how it was. It was all good as long as there was no need for him to meet them in person. And he could finally confirm that the supernatural being who controlled the paper cranes was from Anjing house. He wondered what position that person held within the Anjing house. It was probably not an important position, right? After all, from the looks of it, that supernatural being was merely a messenger of sorts. Suddenly, Zhou Yingzhu said, "Untie me, please. I need to clean my wound. I'll tell you whatever you want to know after that. If I don't treat my wound soon, I'll die." This concludes the chapters for today. Show your appreciation by liking this video and subscribe.